Okay. Call to order the council meeting of June 5th, 2024. We're reconvening into the open session. The time is now 5:32 and the executive session has been concluded. The participants in the executive sessions were myself, council members Eric Gotthelf, Len Feiger, Gusty Kanakas, Tom Priest, Ryan Rodine, and also town manager Michelle Mateer, town water attorney Susan Ryan and Bill Kale, and town attorney Mike Sawyer. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes the substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during that session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I would ask that you state your concerns for the record. Hearing none, I'd like to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. Is there anyone that feels the need to pull anything from there? Okay. So I talked to Michelle, and when we do this procedure, thought it would probably be helpful if as soon as you go through the packet, if you have an item you want to pull, to immediately contact Michelle, so that we don't have to be surprised by that as far as managing time and so forth. Does that sound like a good idea?
Yes, thank you. And just for the purpose of being able to have the proper staff here to discuss that item if council would so wish.
Okay. Okay, next is
I'll make a motion to
please.
the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Eric, second by Gusty. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, next is the regular agenda. Any amendments or deletions?
No, sir.
Okay. We have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular agenda as presented.
Second.
Was that Tom?
Yeah, yes.
Motion by Gusty, second by Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is there any conflict of interest from the board on any issue on tonight's agenda? Okay. Next, we have public comment. This is the time where citizens who want to address the board with any concerns of the town that are not on the agenda this evening. Now is the time to speak up. If you're zooming in, please raise a hand so that we know that you're there and want to address us. Go ahead. Larry, address and...
Thank you. Larry Stone, and I'm referencing myself at address 156 Main Street, which is the Purple House on the 100 block. And I have a little bit of confusion and wanted to address a concern, and that has to do with I'm going to be living in that house. It's currently a single family house, and I understand from the community plan we're looking for a corridor from Main Street to the river, which I hope I can help facilitate. And then we're looking for some sales tax generation, and we're looking for a commercial application on the ground level. What makes sense for me in all of the different ways I've looked at it, having owned the house for 2 years, is if I live on the upstairs, I would like to make short-term rental, make 5 rooms on the downstairs level in a simple Airbnb format. And my question to the council is, would you consider that commercial activity, a sales tax generating activity, or would that not be in line? Because I would need to make some changes because the house is rather ugly and needs to be improved. So that's what I wanted to, I don't want discussion, but I wanted to let you know that that's coming to the board and to discuss with Madison and Scott. But I didn't know how it was going to be seen. If it's going to be commercial or not. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. That's a very good point. We don't like to take up the time with a response, but we'll discuss that and get back to you as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Jay, you have any raised hands out there?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay. Right, in that case, we'll move on to council comments and committee reports. Brian, you got anything?
We did hear that we had signed a letter of support regarding a grant for some help from the National Park Service to look at the railroad for rail trail use, but we heard back that they would like the railroad to be involved in that. So that kind of puts us back at ground zero. So looks like that's not happening.
Okay. Tom?
Nothing for me.
Gus?
I don't have anything either.
Two short ones. Attended a climate action collaborative event for regional net zero definitions this past week. That went very well. We're making good progress there. And then also wanted to say thank you to everybody who participated in the town cleanup day on June 1st, and big thank you to staff, Arnold, everybody who was involved there. Those guys did a phenomenal job, made everybody's life easier and hopefully the town a little cleaner. So kudos to that.
You're mentioning net zero brings up a question I've been meaning to ask, and that is, any idea when they're gonna come out with a product to look at?
Soon, hopefully soon. I don't have the exact date, but yeah, it's an ongoing process, and we're making good progress on it.
So it's hard to say it'll be this summer or this fall.
Yeah, don't know for sure.
Okay. But if that does come out and gets support of the council, would the projects that we have coming in over the next 2 or 3 years, and one underway already, is there a way to slide in the net zero requirements for those projects?
For anything that isn't already under contract, or preferably have gone out for an RFP. Yep.
Okay, just curious.
And I have one thing.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Lynn?
I have one thing to add.
Oh, please.
The Affordable Art Fair has been set for August 10th at the Minturn Market at the Bunkhouse. And it was a phenomenal success last year. We sold out of hundreds and hundreds of pieces of art, and everything was priced $100 and over. This year, everything's going to be, the price has gone up a little higher, but it's still great bargains, and it's a great event for Minturn.
Nice. We'll look forward to that. August 10th, that'll be at the Minturn Market, or I'm sorry, was it somewhere else?
It's August 10th during the Minturn Market on the front porch of the Bunkhouse. And everything last year was $100 or under, and it sounds like this year it'll be a little bit more than that, but still a very reasonably price capped option for some great local art.
Okay. Oh, let's see. And I really don't have anything to say today, so let's move on. Next, we have staff reports.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Councilmember Brian Rodine for participating in our interviews for selecting a Safe Streets for All engineering firm to facilitate our efforts through creating a safety action plan for town roads. So we conducted 3 interviews over the past week, selected a firm. That firm will be providing a proposal that will then come before council for approval before we get underway with this grant, where we will put a stakeholder group together and then have community virtual meetings for folks to attend as well, so that all in all, we can end up with a plan to create safer streets, and this should help us in the process of getting grants through CDOT. I just want to point out that in the packet, there is information on upcoming Main Street bulb outs. This is another safety measure. It's pretty impactful to residents and businesses on Main Street, so I don't want this to come as a surprise. This has been in door-to-door hangers, it's been in newsletters, it's been in council meetings, it's been on the town website, but I want to continue to just reiterate and get it out there that we have now 5 intersections in town. Oh,
I'd go ahead and sit the bug.
Okay. We have 5 intersections in town. I heard, actually, it was really rather encouraging. I heard from multiple residents who live down on the furthest intersection south. Is it Meek or Man, Gusty? Man? You're not sure.
I would like to.
know where Meek is, but I don't know.
So it's Man. I heard from residents who utilize Man to get onto Main Street, and they asked if their intersection could be included. So Jeff Spinell added that intersection, and it's being submitted to CDOT in the coming days. CDOT has already tentatively given us a initial thumbs up, and it now needs to just go through the permitting process. Cindy Krieg has been working really hard with our downtown developers on the Downtown Development Authority Stakeholders Group. There will be an open house for anyone to attend, and we encourage council to consider stopping by. Larry's Milk Shack, Monday, forgot the time, but apps and some beverages will be there to see, what folks have been talking about and next steps. So council's encouraged to stop by and check it out. And lastly, another thank you to Brian for doing our inaugural council video. So we're trying to find different ways that we can communicate with the community. And one that we did this last week, Cindy and Brian did, was create a video telling people about what's on our upcoming agenda. And that goes on YouTube and Facebook. And we hope that you all, through your social media platforms, will share that out to help spread the word about what we're doing here at council, and anyone that would like to participate or pay attention, we encourage them to do so. That's all I got. Oh, lastly, if there's any confusion about Track C, I just want to make sure that we're clear. So Track C is the southernmost tract on the Minturn North parcel that was conveyed to the town. This tract has to go through a public process to determine what everyone would like to do with it. In the meantime, we are looking at adding some parking and extended shoulder for snow storage along that tract, which would come via free dirt from the Minturn North project that the Minturn North contractors would create a shelf for this parking and snow storage area. So this would be free to the town. I did put on here, however, because Jeff Spinell and I talked about it, I said, what if someday we decide we don't want any parking there at all? What would happen? He said it will probably cost you about $50,000 to have the everything taken down and unbuilt and have the dirt removed. So that's where that $50,000 comes in. We are not paying any money for anything up front. Mine should be changed down the road. Just want to make that clear.
I did want to comment on that, the kind of initial take on that property, and Jeff's opinion that it wasn't suitable for pocket parks and things like that. I think we should be really careful to be open-minded through this whole process. I think if you took a look at Little Beach, you'd probably assume it wasn't a very good parcel for a park, and without that, we would have 0 parks. So I think we need to be open-minded and creative when going through this process and looking at different designs and things like that.
Hopefully very creative. So thank you.
All right. Anything else from Michelle? All right. You got the finance report in there. No need to review that. unless you
Only if
want
there are
to.
questions.
Huh?
Just if there are questions.
Anybody got any question on the finance update? We're in good shape. Our sales tax is up over last year, by the way, by quite a bit, so. Thank you retailers and business people in town. Okay, next we have no special presentations. So this time we will, convene into the Minturn Liquor License Authority Board and have another roll call. Brian. Where are you?
Brian here.
I'm here.
Gusty here.
Eric here.
Earl here.
Ben here.
Okay. And with that, I'll hand it off to. Yeah, you're there. Okay. Yeah.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay, first I would like to introduce Tierney DeLude, who's in the audience tonight. She's the owner manager of the Eagle River Inn. 146 North Main Street LLC, doing business as the Eagle River Inn, has applied for a new lodging and entertainment liquor license. New licenses require a public hearing, so there's more in-depth consideration than the annual renewal, and that's why it's placed as a separate item on the agenda. The neighborhood for Minturn has been established historically as the entire town, so we don't have a town sectioned off for liquor needs. The location has in the past operated as a bed and breakfast and has held a bed and breakfast license. In this application, they are operating as a small hotel and utilizing a lodging and entertainment liquor license. In the recent years, the location was utilized as a private event hotel. Therefore, there's not really a change of use. The parking needs, everything are sufficient. Granting this license meets the desires of the neighborhood, since I haven't received any issues, pro or con. And the application was filed on April 24th, 2024. I like that date because it's 42424. I thought that was clever. In accordance with CRS 12-47-311 sub 1, the liquor authority must hold the license for 30 days minimum. This hearing presents 41 days. Notice of the public hearing was published at least 10 days prior to the hearing on May 22nd, and the premises were posted on May 21st. As required by CRS, the shareholders of 10% or more have submitted fingerprints, and they all came back clean and fine. The application is reviewed by legal counsel, and any concerns were addressed, and staff is recommending approval. I do have one potential recommendation, and if council would so desire, and that would be that at least one person be tip certified when they're serving liquor.
Okay.
If anybody's got any questions, otherwise I'll let Tierney discuss if she's as the applicant.
Jay, just a quick question on page 93. You were recommending we make reread in the conditions when whoever makes the motion. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure. So Tierney, please,
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you. So as you said, I'm Tierney Delude, and I live currently in the Eagle River Inn and with my husband, and we're going to be running the property. So we're here to represent the inn for the liquor license. And to give you kind of a concept of what we're thinking is, initially we were thinking it'd be a great amenity for guests when they're staying there. We've started to think we could also open it up to the community, and so people could sit outside, have a drink, a wine, a beer, something like that. We don't really have a bar. It's very small, so we're not going to be doing anything huge, mainly mixed drinks that are sort of prepared ahead of time, and wine and beer, that kind of thing. We have 13 rooms. We'll be doing continental breakfast every morning. We're also going to be doing some light fare for food, like sandwiches, snacks, things like that, flatbread, something simple. And our thought is, as far as we don't have details, but timing of when we would serve drinks, maybe start at 9 if someone wants a mimosa, to like 10 at night, kind of thing. Trying to think if there's anything else. So yeah, so that's pretty much what we have in mind.
Okay, that sounds great. So when do you think you'll be done with your remodeling?
Famous question. It changes, but we're hoping by the 22nd, we hope to have everything done of this month,
Oh, wow.
June.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then
Maybe take
hopefully,
a tour.
well, so what we're gonna do first is have friends and family stay there so we can have everything working at once to make sure it works all at once. And then that next week, we're hoping to do like some kind of a soft opening.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if all goes well, open up for guests the following. So,
Thank you.
any other questions?
Any questions from the board?
Sounds like a good fit.
Okay, great. And if anyone wants to come by and see the progress, feel free, I'm there all day.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Tierney.
Thank you.
Okay, so if anyone wants to make a motion, please go to page 93, and there's 3 conditions you need to read into it. Yes. Open it up for the public. Any comments or questions from citizens? Anybody online, Jay?
No, sir, there is not, with their hand up.
Close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve Town of Minturn Liquor Licensing Authority for 145 North Main Street, LLC, P.O. Box 334, Minturn.
And if you could go to page 93 and just read those conditions in, there's 3 conditions.
I see one, the other one just denotes the public hearing. So condition recommended at a minimum, the license manager and server be server trained by tips, and that a certified server be on duty at all times while alcoholic beverages are served. Liquor Authority emphasized the requirement of operating on an orderly establishment. Public hearing has been held. Nothing further.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Tom, second by Gusty. Roll call, please.
Brian, aye.
Aye.
Gusty, aye.
Eric, aye.
Well, aye.
Lynn, I.
All right. Welcome to the town. Can't wait till you open.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Next, we have our business items, Resolution 16, Series 2024, resolution approving the Battle North Service Plan.
Mr. Mayor, staff is requesting a continuance on this resolution. As council will recall, our special municipal advisor, Jim Mann, provided a number of comments on the service plan. We have been working with Battle Mountain to obtain information relative to hopefully resolving many of the items that Jim identified. We received a package of information last night responsive to some of these concerns, and we will be setting up a meeting with Battle shortly to discuss what has been checked off the list, what if anything needs to continue to be discussed. Our goal is at the second June meeting to come back and have this hopefully in a position where the council can make a decision.
Thank you, Mike. So with that, do we have a motion for continuance?
I'll make a motion for continuance, resolution number 16, series 2024. Town Council, Town of Minturn, Colorado, approving consolidated service plan for Battle North Metropolitan Districts number 1 through 4.
Mr. Mayor, just a point of order that continuance will be to the June 19th meeting.
To the June 19th Minturn Town Council meeting, which I'll be in attendance for.
Second? Anybody?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Tom and a second by Gusty. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next, we have ordinance number 10, series 2024, second reading. An ordinance amending chapter 16, article 26 of the Community Housing Standards and Guidelines. Please take it.
There you are. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Council, Scott Hun with the Planning Department. Before you tonight is ordinance number 10 on second reading. However, I have to apologize. I realized that the draft that went into this packet was not updated since first reading. If you will recall, yeah, thanks. Sorry about that. Ordinance number 10 was reviewed on first reading on May 15th. The direction from council at that time was to move that ordinance through as is, except for a change from the 140% AMI to 120. The simplest of changes I did not make to that ordinance before it ended up in this packet. So I have made that change. I have submitted it to Cindy so she can load that, and we can, if we need to reload that. I don't know if this needs to be continued as well, or if we can pass it on second reading with knowledge that it's been changed to 120 at your direction, and that's how it will be recorded.
That seems to be a pretty easy adjustment to make. So I think we can just move forward with it rather than continuing it. Or is it accommodating? Okay. I did, besides that, I also had another question as far as on page 277 and 278. I was looking for where they were going to what is the appreciation rate of a deed restricted home? And then also, what is the appreciation rate of rental units that are affordable?
So if you recall at the first reading and the staff report that went with that, the premise here is to change the inclusionary housing ordinance to allow for the town to restrict and have a price appreciation cap. The actual nuts and bolts of that will occur in the standards, which were approved originally via resolution, specifically to allow us the flexibility to change those, change target AMIs, things like that, as the times change. So those will be a follow-up resolution that define what those price appreciation caps are, what types of improvements can be made to deed restricted price cap units, and perhaps rental units as well in that price appreciation.
Okay. And then there was another section that had here it is, section 1626-100, A and B.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm just not reading this right, but A says it's going to be 20% of the total residential units of any residential or mixed-use development proposed to create and so forth would be affordable housing. And then B says it's 10%.
Yeah, so those are actually not changing. That's from our original housing ordinance that was adopted in 2020. So the way that's supposed to work is that 20% of the overall units, anything over 5, is deed restricted for locals only. 10% of the overall development is supposed to be deed restricted, price capped. And originally it was 10% of the overall units, the initial sales price was going to be price capped, and it was tied to 200% AMI. After that, subsequent resales could be whatever they want. So in this ordinance, we're changing not the 20 or the 10. That's something that staff is more than willing to come back and have conversations with council and the planning commission about. If we want to up those percentages, quite frankly, they're pretty low from the standpoint of looking at other jurisdictions. But it was our first attempt at doing this and seeing how it went. So this is really geared towards addressing the AMI, so lowering it from 200% down to 120, so it serves a different part of the market. And then also adding in the price appreciation caps, which didn't exist in the original ordinance that we adopted. So,
Any other questions for
I have one question.
Ms. Lance?
How does it work if you're a small developer and let's say you want to develop 6 units? How does that mean that the 6th unit has to be deed restricted and also has to be affordable?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I really worry that this is disincentivizing and gonna create the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish without at the same time increasing the percentage of a development. And I know that we're limited in big developments now in town, but if you force a developer to sell a certain amount of homes at an even lower market rate, that just means they're gonna crank up the price on all the other things in order to make up for it. And that's just how economics works. So I don't wanna see that. I'd be curious if we got any input from developers on what kind of projects or impacts on potential projects this change would have. And if we haven't, I think that's something we should incorporate as we keep moving forward with tweaking these changes, because you just have to be careful when you set these incentives, because then you end up with, yeah, it's great, a couple of $300,000 units, and everything else has to be $3 million in order to pay for that market offset.
I share Brian's concerns, particularly for really small developments.
Yeah, but, so how do we, so that's saying that we can't get affordable housing then?
That's not at all what I'm saying.
Okay, so what would be an alternative?
I think we haven't done a good enough job going to other communities and looking to figure out what sort of incentive environments and code environments help to create the successful projects that have been put out there. There's a long list of potential actions. I mean, a simple Google search will show you some things that you can incorporate into an overall housing plan, and I think we're attacking this from a piecemeal section, and in the meantime, it's going to create the wrong incentive environment, and it'll actually create more expensive housing in the community.
Scott, you've got some experience with this. What's your thoughts?
Well, I tend to agree with Brian. That is kind of how this works. And it is something that is used in multiple communities that I'm used to working in and dealing with. There aren't really all that many great solutions unless there's subsidies. If a community has the budget to put money underneath a project, if they have land, those are the things that deliver more units at different price points. This was the town's attempt after working with someone who specializes in housing regulations and incentivizing housing across the state, Willa Williford. She came in and worked with us. We worked with the Eagle County Housing and Development Authority for months to get to something that would make sense for the town. But like most of these types of things, that was a decision made by that council based on their comfort level of where the town wanted to be as far as requiring or incentivizing. There are other things that you can do to incentivize these types of units and the right kind of developments that have a mix of price points, a mix of unit types, good design, those types of things. Fee waivers is one of them. Putting land or money under a project is another. Those are the types of situations where you have public-private partnerships, public money, leveraging of funds from the state, those types of things that make a big difference. A lot of those things are still on the table, but it also, I look at communities like the town of Vail, I look at Eagle County, large budgets, large pots of money to put under these projects. I don't necessarily know that this community is there. So this is a step in the right direction to at least lower the AMI to project out into the development community. This is the price point where we're trying to hit, because this is missing middle housing. These are professionals, these are young families, these are, the folks that perhaps are being priced out of this market already. So I agree with you, Brian. I hear you. And I think we should have additional conversations with developers, with the Housing and Development Authority. So we can do that to see if we can make this even better. But this was something that I've known about for a while and have had direction to change. And it came out of the community plan to change it from 200 to something lower. That's how this exercise started, was fix this now. And if we can do better and have deeper discussions about this, our times have changed since 4 years ago. Quite frankly, they've gotten worse from the standpoint of pressure on locals to find housing. So I'm all ears, and I'd be happy to facilitate whatever process you want to try to make this better.
Yeah, and of course, we do have opportunities that may be possible. Still waiting for the school district. Have they gone ahead and gotten all their referrals done yet? Are they done and entering the process?
The school district has submitted an application for a preliminary subdivision plat.
Okay.
And we're currently working through the initial stages of review.
Okay. So that's, the district owns that land. That's the opportunity for affordability if they have the land to do it. So I don't know if we're going to be available to that, as workforce housing for the school district. But if they have, inventory to spare, that might be an opportunity for the town to take advantage of. So And other things are down the pipe could happen. Really, the only way we can do a large scale, not a large scale, but affordable housing for our locals is to work with other entities to get get the land free. And there may be some opportunities in a few months, depending on how the federal government does things. So anyway, that's not here. Any more discussion on this?
I kind of feel the same way Brian did. I even had it written down that, when you build 5 units and 20% is 1 unit, the other 4 units is gonna subsidize that 1 unit that's cheaper, but I do see Scott saying, that's kind of a step in the right direction. At least you have 1 instead of none.
Yep.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
I don't think we need to lose focus on the original objective of this, which was to correct the AMI piece for starters. And then all the other programs Scott's already referenced, those are gonna be case-by-case basis, whether it's 5 units or 50 units. And each one's gonna be a little different. And to circle back, yeah, it is economics, and the economics are ugly. So the reality is, in regards to what public money is available, again, is gonna be case-by-case. So I would caution inserting that as a fixed item every single time we go down this pike, as opposed to it's an objective, it'll be pursued on each case. However, these particular hard figures here are our starting point.
I just worry that it's going to prevent the type of development that we want in Minturn that's been identified in the community plan, and that's why I'm against it currently, but I'm just gonna put that out there, it's fine. If you all
I mean, if
you're
you
welcome to disagree with me, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm gonna disagree with you.
Yeah, I
Great.
think quite a
Because-
few people have been waiting a long time that's lived in Urban Valley and so forth, and
I'm just saying that the PUD process, et cetera, the way each one of these developments has had to go through, particularly now moving forward, there'll be a significant vetting period to do exactly what you want to get done.
I would just put, I'm gonna pick on Minturn North, this is not in a mean way. We are hearing feedback that the housing was listed very high. It's not just Minturn North, the house across the street from you is for sale for $2.6 million right now. But if you take the Minturn North style project, for example, and say the houses on the end have to be sold at half the price they're currently being sold at, how does the developer, what does that make them do to their other 30 units there? And so are we willing to, and then that doesn't change. Those are built, they're sold, they're expensive. That actually could have the net effect of increasing our average housing costs in town because you're decreasing 4 units and then you're increasing them across 30. So I'm just saying, like, I don't know that we want to sell our hardened future development by, getting a couple of extra houses built for a little bit cheaper when you're, then the other 80% get more expensive. So that's my worry. I agree. I see the other side. I get it, but I wanted to state that, and that's why I'm going to tend to be against it. So.
If we're gonna pick the Minturn North piece, then the fact of the matter is, the original plan got killed due to density, which segues into larger houses on lots, again, economics. So we can quibble about this all day long, God knows with Minturn North piece. But again, going forward, fueling that, knowing what you know right now, and you rewind time and you're looking at Minturn North in the past, maybe different decisions would have been made based on that fact.
No, I totally agree.
Because the end result is, well, you don't like this, all right, less density means bigger houses, more expensive.
I see that. 100% agreed there, and I think one of the main things that a town can do that doesn't have maybe money to subsidize these things is to allow for use by right in their code for denser developments and things like that for housing projects of that type. But yeah, again, that's something that.
So that was the other thing I wanted to touch on. I'm glad you did, because we're moving forward with our code rewrite. We're going to start looking at zone districts. Again, taking from the community plan and the recommendations for some of the zone districts, some of the recommendations around housing, making ADUs a use by right, looking at lot sizes and other things, lot coverage, those types of things that, there's a balancing act. And it has effect on character within neighborhoods, but does it achieve a higher goal? I mean, those are the things that we're going to be talking about as we start drafting those new sections and bringing them to Planning Commission and Council, understanding maybe what the trade-offs of those things might be. Maybe there aren't a lot of trade-offs. Maybe it's a win-win. But that's a good point, because there's other things other than putting money under a project or waiving fees that are directly tied to zoning and development standards and dimensional limitations for new development that could help, that could incentivize those types of developments. So, Lynn, did you have a question or a comment?
No, I mean, I think the net effect of this is going to be to discourage the small developments. It just concerns me whether this is going to accomplish what we want it to accomplish.
Yeah, I guess I look at it, and Minturn North wasn't subject to the housing regs. They had theirs in line before, so they're grandfathered into the old code, but they did agree to do a half-ass attempt anyway. So, with that said, if we had, let's say, a 30-unit development, and so 20% and 10, 20 and 10 of those are going to be affordable. I'd rather have that percentage of those 30 homes have locals that are preferably in town that are able to buy a deed restricted unit and have that, and let the others pay more with whatever they want to build. Because at least we'll have some locals in town that are able to buy a place and live here. And I think that's, until we get to a better place with this, I think that's a good objective to move forward with, at least on the short term. So anyway, any further discussion or questions for Scott?
We're gonna go public comment.
Yes, thank you. Open this up for public hearing. Do we have any citizens that want to have any questions on this issue? Jay?
No, sir.
Forget it all the time. Anyway, so with that, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 10, series 2024, an ordinance of the town of Minturn, Colorado, amending chapter 16, article 2 and 26 of the Minturn Municipal Code with the changes Scott mentioned that have been submitted.
Second.
Motion by Eric, second by Tom. Roll call, please.
Brian, nay.
Tom, aye.
Trustee, aye.
Eric, aye.
Earl, aye.
Lynn, I with reservations.
Okay, so that's the first reading done on ordinance 10. Going on to the next item, resolution 27, series 2024, a resolution approving a conditional use permit for Minturn North, the temporary construction management office and storage uses. Basil?
Yes, that is me. So this is a conditional use permit for temporary construction management office and storage uses. This is very similar to other CUPs in the area, of which there are 5. Per the applicant's application narrative, due to the amount of construction that will be ongoing throughout the site, we believe the construction management office, unpaved parking, construction material and equipment storage, and associated restroom facilities are better located on an adjacent 0.66 acre Union Pacific Railroad property across from 4th Street. This location will have less impact on Taylor Avenue residents and owners within the Minturn North PUD. By placing a management office at this location, we can see who is entering and exiting the construction site, and it gives the subcontractors a good place to check in with added parking when needed. The more efficient we can be, the less impact there will be on existing surrounding land uses. This review should result in council making a formal decision for approval with conditions, or denial of the CUP request in accordance with the standards, criteria, and findings outlined in section 1621-620, conditional use of the Minturn Municipal Code. And then I will now go through all of those findings for the record. The criteria. A, the relationship and impact of the use on the community development objectives of the town. B, the effect of the use on distribution of population, transportation, utilities, schools, parks, and recreational facilities and other public facilities and public facility needs. 3, the effect upon traffic with particular reference to congestion, automotive and pedestrian safety, traffic flow and control, access, maneuverability, and snow removal. 4, the effect upon the character of the area in which the proposed use is to be located, including the scale and bulk of the proposed use in relation to surrounding uses, the amount of noise, lighting, and glare, dust, and compatibility of the use with the character area it is in and surrounding areas. And 5, the findings. The Planning Commission and Town Council shall make the following findings before making a recommendation or decision that a conditional use permit be granted. 1, that the proposed location of the use is in accordance with the purposes of this chapter, the community plan, and the purposes of the zone in which the site is located. 2, that the proposed location of the use and the conditions under which it would be operated or maintained will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, or materially injurious to properties or improvements in the vicinity. 3, that the proposed use will comply with each of the applicable provisions of this chapter. Staff is recommending similar conditions to what the other CUPs operate under, with a few tweaks to be specific to Minturn North, such as not allowing the storage of ATVs or snowmobiles, the timing of renewal. The others are every 3 years, while this is proposed to be for an initial 3 years and then have to come back annually for a renewal. And shortened working hours. The others are 7 to 7, 7 days a week, and this is proposed to be 7 to 6 Monday through Saturday for exterior work, and 7 to 6 Monday through Sunday for interior work. Staff has not identified any issues specific to this proposal. This proposal is similar to other CUPs associated with contractor storage, and the applicant has provided evidence to demonstrate that the use can meet all of the conditions and terms of use. Under an economically vibrant community, commercial development and industry of the 2023 Imagine Minturn Community Plan, it states in part that data from the town's business license show a diverse and entrepreneurial mix of businesses. Construction and trades again represent a large proportion of businesses ranging from general contracting and construction businesses to heavy construction. The UP property and the lease areas is one of the first things people see when they enter town from the north. This is a unique piece of land which allows light industrial contractor storage uses that are not permitted elsewhere in town, and thus adds to the diversity and mix of business. As part of the construction management plan submitted to the town, all contractor traffic should only be accessing the site via Minturn Road. There will likely be a material increase in local traffic due to the development project, but unlikely to be as a result of the approval of the CUP. Congestion, pedestrian safety, traffic flow and control access, maneuverability, and snow removal in the immediate vicinity of the subject property should all be priorities for the applicant. Staff believes that the main factor impacting the character of the surrounding area, or importantly, the compatibility of the use within the Game Creek character area, is the visual or aesthetic quality of the lease area. The applicant has stated that his intent is to utilize the fenced and screened area for the storage of materials and equipment and a temporary construction office. No additional site exterior lighting is proposed with the CUP request, and staff does not anticipate that the use of the lease area will generate noise, glare, or dust outside of the approved working hours as laid out in the recommended conditions. The continued lease of UP lands in the Game Creek character area for temporary light industrial and storage uses does appear contrary to the Minturn Municipal Code. Yet a primary purpose of the conditional use permit review, the town's primary zoning and code enforcement tool to control uses on private property, is to ensure that permitted uses are in effect temporary and inspected on a regular basis for compliance, that any such approval granted by the town is valid so long as the terms and conditions are adhered to. Generally, the locations and uses proposed, if properly conditioned, should not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, nor should they be materially injurious to the properties or improvements in the vicinity if the site is maintained in accordance with the standards of the Minturn Municipal Code and any conditions of approval. Staff believes that as proposed and if conditioned properly, the requested CUP for contractor storage will comply with the applicable provisions of the town zoning code. Staff suggests that the proposed conditional use permit, I apologize, I just said that, at the Planning Commission hearing, all of the present planning commissioners voted to recommend approval to the town council, amending 2 of the conditions, and that 1, that the CUP expire as soon as the final COs for all 39 units have been issued, and 2, that instead of what was originally proposed, which was an annual report to council based on any violations that had to have been taken care of, that for the first year, there be quarterly reports, and then all subsequent years can have annual reports to council. So that is my presentation. We do have the applicants here tonight, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board for Madison?
So the current lease is listed at 3 years,
3 years.
and estimate of completion is what? Since that condition was inserted by P and Z, so.
Can I get on? Yeah, we have the developer here to answer questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Name and address, please.
Rick Hermes with Minturn North. Happy to answer any questions. It's a 3-year project for us. So short of something going wrong in the global economic program, but we expect to be 3 years. And we're well on our way with that, so.
Obviously, as listed in the package, there's a list of concerns expressed by Taylor residents, and one that was not brought up, that's a potential in the next 3-year period, is the Bellem Bridge. So a much higher increased traffic load on Minturn Road due to the fact we'll not be able to access across the river and have to go to the North Bridge. So I would just throw out there what contingencies would have to be put in place if that occurs due to the heavy traffic that's gonna be coming out of the CUP location. And any mitigations we might wanna consider.
Yeah, we've got engineers that are keeping watch on the bridge. And right now it's stable, but we're gonna be getting bids on either repair or replacement moving forward over the next few months. So that is a valid concern. And so if you are working on Minturn Road, is there a way to keep a lane open so that you can deal with that?
I'm not sure if I understand the question, but
Okay, basically he's saying that if you're working on Minturn Road and it's kind of shut down while you're doing all the work, that would incur some heavy vehicles going over the Bellem Bridge.
No, I'm driving at the fact that we're gonna have to coordinate with you. I'm jumping ahead. If Bellem Bridge has to be either replaced or significantly repaired and is not passable, that means all traffic on that side of the bridge, all residents, et cetera, will be using Minturn Road. And obviously, depending on the status of 4th Street, that could be problematic as well. So I'm just driving the fact that the coordination, the quarterly piece is gonna be rather pivotal. Because as you've already run into, it's touchy at the moment, and we don't want
we're
that.
doing everything we can on the communication
Yeah.
side. I mean, there's nothing else we could do on the communication side.
No, I understand.
Minturn Road will not be paved until next summer, so it's not a this year project, although putting in the turn lanes on Highway 6 will be done this year. We have no intention on closing it between now and then for any reason. Matter of fact, we're required to send most of our construction traffic through Minturn Road, not over Bellem Bridge, so. And I don't think there's been any issue with that I'm aware of.
Tom, if I may, are you driving at the fact that rather than having the construction management activities within the bounds of the PUD, within the fenced area, now it's going to be across the street, so there's going to be additional right-hand, left-hand turn in and out
Yeah,
of that?
the residents are rather concerned that, understandably, now you got it, the whole road straddled, both sides have activity. And it'll be the primary thoroughfare for all of Minturn North, not the development, the entire town. So that is valid concern. And I guess that leads to the other question, is the alternative to not having it here is what?
On site.
And that was another item that was brought up, which was, and I am not familiar with this, the objective of keeping this area cleared out, cleaned out. I don't know what validity to that there was of past efforts. So I guess that's a question over to you.
Can you rephrase the question?
One of the letters just mentioned there was efforts by the town, promises made by council that this area that is being considered for the CUP, the whole area, to include what's currently being used as temporary storage. The objective was to try to clear that out. Now they're voicing concern, obviously, that we're going backwards.
I'm not aware of the objective to clear it out. I'm aware that other parties have been interested in leasing the rail yard area, and council at the last CUP application, council denied that application. That application was for the northernmost section of the rail yard, and council denied that based on the concern that they did not want to see industrial creep. That being said, the town was interested at one point in part of this area that is up for the CUP tonight, in leasing this area for potential town uses. However, the town could not afford the lease cost per annual basis. So the council was not able to move forward with a lease contract with Union Pacific Railroad due to costs associated.
And what kind of uses was that?
The one projected was a dog park.
And also, it was due to the fact that they wouldn't give us more than a year-to-year lease, like this lease appears to be. So it would be tough to put resources into it, not knowing that they could just pull the plug.
That's correct.
Well, it's year to year and they have a 30-day notice, so it could be less.
Yeah.
The purpose from our perspective, we just felt like it was a better location that had less impact. I mean, obviously it costs us money to put this in and do it this way, and it's already a disturbed piece of property. It made sense where the location was because 4th Street will be reopened, and the less traffic we can have coming in and out of there and the little more parking we could get with it just made sense.
What's the projection on 4th Street timeline?
We hope to have all the infrastructure in that area, everything but Minturn Road, done by the end of the summer, or I think it's September 15th or something. I'm sure there'll be cleanup stuff, landscape and some of those kind of things, but 4th Street will be open after that, and that fence will then go along the perimeter of 4th Street.
Can you help us maybe, since you're up here, just kind of walk through, like I'm familiar with how a construction site satellite kind of temporary office looks and feels like. Can you run us through what the typical uses would be and what the look and feel would be? And
it's in the packet, actually.
Yeah, I think.
But I mean, so our project managers will be in there, superintendents. If we have a delivery that is not ready to go on a residence, it can be dropped there. But we're not going to be storing like overlap grading material and things like that in there. It's an orderly site. We have our safety meetings, so we need more space for safety meetings, that kind of stuff on a regular basis. So it's a sizable trailer to put in there to make sure we can fit everybody in there. But
I think my take on it just overall is it seems like within our guidelines of use out there. I've seen those types of offices. They don't seem to add the real activities going on next door. They don't really add noise or light or anything. It's temporary. There's a lot worse uses that I could picture this lease going toward on the UP side. I don't see any reason to really not allow it personally.
And the efficiency of the site location and I don't know, it just seems like it would keep the construction area more organized if it was managed down into that parcel of land. And to me, if it makes the builder more efficient, the quicker this thing will get built out and we can go back to life as normal over there. I just don't see the objections can override what the benefits are.
When you're done, is there any requirement to leave it nicer than you found it or anything?
it has to be returned to what it was.
So just leave it.
Or just leave it.
Which isn't much. But the access is already there, so we're not creating a new access or anything.
I think people probably are, they're not writing in their comments, but they're probably also thinking that that has served as kind of a underground corridor to access the river and some places in the town without having to walk on the road. So there's probably that going on. I don't really know what we can do about that since that's technically not really.
Well, there's the drainage that goes by on the kind of north end, so there'll be space between what we have and that drainage, so you can still walk along that section.
Good.
So.
Any more questions from the board?
I don't have any questions. I just comment, I read a lot of the letters and a lot of people wanted to see it stay open. We don't have that authority to keep it open. You know, it's owned by UP and they can do a conditional use permit with anybody else. Like Brian said, there could be a lot worse than what Minturn North's gonna do. And I think with Minturn North being able to use that, kind of back to what Earl said too, it's gonna speed up your process a little bit. And if I lived over there, I'd wanna see it done sooner than later, that's for sure.
It would start tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, since it's a resolution, there's no open hearing, so.
Always welcome, welcome to take public comment if
Yeah.
you'd like.
If anyone from the public would like to make any comments on this, or ask any questions, you're welcome to do so. Hearing none unless Jay sees a hand raised.
No, sir.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 27, series 2024. A resolution approving conditional use application CU 01-2024 for Minturn North Construction Company, UPRR Railroad Avenue, Town of Minturn, with the 21 conditions that was listed.
Good motion.
Eric seconds.
I certainly didn't want to hear you read it. Motion by Gussie, second by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next, we have ordinance number 11, series 2024, first reading, an ordinance amending the town historic register to add 151 Main Street.
Hello, it is me again.
So who's gonna do this?
Hi.
Oh, it's you again. Okay,
Yes.
Go ahead, sorry.
So this is a town-initiated nomination application. Staff found of the 5 different eligibility criteria, the structure fit within 3. Connection with persons significant in history, distinctive characteristics of a type, period, method of construction or artisan, and geographic importance. 151 Main Street reflects the late Victorian style of architecture, specifically folk Victorian and minimal traditional, that was constructed in North America in the early to mid 20th century. Traditional minimal became extremely popular just before and post World War II. The preference of this architecture was to make relatively simple houses out of materials that were readily available, and as the railroad expanded, factory-made building parts could be sent to far corners of the continents. This is an iconic structure with its twin sitting next door, fitting as these houses were for brothers. They are one of the first buildings one sees as they drive into the heart of Minturn. They represent a time when Minturn used to be ranches and farmland, as the people who built these houses ran cattle, sheep, a dairy farm, and lettuce fields that contributed to Minturn being called the lettuce capital of the United States for a brief time. They have since been co-opted into commercial stores rather than residences and continue to contribute to the character of the town. There was public outcry at the potential of this building being torn down, with a packed council room filled with community members. This structure represents a transitional period of Minturn's history, where Minturn recently incorporated as one of the oldest towns in Eagle County. 151 Main Street is a lot that is in the middle of the town's commercial core. This building is a familiar sight to any locals and visitors who have lived in or frequented Minturn. The Nelsons were an institution for Minturn, with Mr. Ben Nelson running the Nelson Dairy and Mr. Peter Nelson running the Nelson Ranch starting in 1888. According to Minturn, a memoir, Pete Nelson homesteaded the ranch at the foot of Meadow Mountain, where the Forest Service complex was built in the late 1980s. The Nelsons owned all the land that was later known as Molloy Park, which they later sold to the New Jersey Zinc Co., but in the 30s they used all this land and all of the Cross Creek area for pasture and winter feeding. The Nelsons trucked lettuce to Denver weekly for several years, contributing to the unofficial title of lettuce capital of the country for Minturn. The property owner did attend the HPC meeting, and the property owner was had no issues with this being deemed historic, and the HPC forwarded a recommendation of approval for this designation.
Thank you, Madison. Any questions from Madison? Pretty straightforward. You know what I was surprised to see is I've heard that house was 1881 when it was built, and I see here it was 1917.
At least according to the Eagle County Assessors.
Okay. Okay, so there's no further discussion or question. We will entertain a motion.
I would like to say one thing.
Go ahead.
I mean, the description makes me laugh. Minimal, traditional, built out of simple rear. I mean, it's basically a shed with paint on it, and there's history behind it. I get it, but this is something like personally, I think that you could include a picture of something like this and have a form-based code where somebody that wanted to do something in our commercial core to increase commercial revenue, et cetera, for the town, you could show a picture of this and they could more economically effectively build up 2 stories, make something look like it, include a sign on the front yard with a nod to the history, and you'd accomplish basically the same thing. So
I think that's
my view.
Yeah, and this process will work is if we go ahead and designate it, then we can sit down and talk to Marco or Pete or whoever that owns the property and see what we can do as far as maintaining character of the area while also being able to, I'm speaking for myself, and perhaps you too, Brian, is we're stuck right now with everybody afraid to buy these lots and do anything with them because they're afraid they're going to get wrapped into just having an old house that is not commercially viable. So if we can have come to a reasonable resolution of a project that takes advantage of the location and perhaps does some kind of effort to keep the character of the structure, the facade of the structure. 151, could you move that thing to the front because you have a 0 setback on Main Street and the 100 block? I'm just throwing that out there, but and then do something behind the house that does it. Things like that, just some ideas going back and forth that enables a commercially developable project rather than having it just sit there without anything happening. So. And it'll be a negotiation, but it would be, well, I don't know if it's a negotiation, but they would present and the council would give them feedback, but it'll be the council's decision on what to do.
I would say those 2 houses are really an iconic symbol of Minturn. And Minturn doesn't have that much that's really super historic or super of historic interest in the main block, especially since Hope's building was torn down. I mean, a lot of photographs of Minturn feature those 2 houses. I mean, it is a symbol for us that everyone sees. So I'm not saying that I would be opposed to changing them or putting something in back, but I think they truly are historic. They truly are very significant for the town, and we need to be careful to preserve them, not just knock them down and put up something that has some Victorian flourishes on it.
Okay, well, those are the kind of very things we would be discussing, I think, is with each thing. I see it as being a case-by-case evaluation and recommendation for any kind of development. And all it takes is hopefully all it takes is a little creativity to make that happen. Any further comments at this time?
If we do approve these today, does that impact, like, if somebody wants to actually tear it down and make it look the same, can we still be able to do that with given approval?
No. So this is this will be designating that house as a historic landmark, or whatever you want, whatever the term is.
So really, we wouldn't have much to negotiate on after we approve this, though.
Well, that doesn't mean, you know, the code allows us, correct me if I'm wrong, the code allows us to compromise if the need is there.
So if a structure is designated as historic, and you still want to do something to it, whether that be affect the outside, if you want to relocate it, or if you want to demolish it, you have to apply for a certificate of appropriateness. The reason why I kind of separated those three things out is that there's different criteria that's associated with each of those three things. And so if you did want to demolish it, you would have to prove, you know, different things like, is it structurally safe or not? Like there has to be actual reason, and it can't just be, we want to put a big building there. It has to actually be something truly wrong with the building, and so that it's not safe to keep that standing anymore. Same thing with kind of relocation or changing the exterior of the building. If you want to change the exterior of the building, we have adopted the Secretary of Interior's design guidelines that are put out by the National Park Service. And so you have to abide by those design guidelines, even if you're building an addition onto it or a separate structure on the lot. It doesn't necessarily have to be matchy-matchy, but there are certainly criteria that has to be adhered to if you're going to develop on a historically designated lot. So there is a path forward, but there's just more regulations on top of it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If there no more questions, I'll open it up for public hearing. We have someone that has a question.
Spence Neubauer, 444 Eagle River Street. I just have a couple quick things. They're $1,000 a square foot right now for a 700-foot building. It's an $800,000 building. Is anybody buying that? If you have a possible negotiation later, I wouldn't. And then the only thing is, if we do designate, and it is a tough process forward to adjust it, we need to be okay as a town and a council with them sitting empty. Because you can't put a business in there and rent it to somebody and make that payment without it being exorbitant. So we can designate it, but we need to be okay with what it's going to look like moving forward.
Larry Stone from 152 Main Street in what is known as Helen's House, where Ben Nelson built that house in 1881. So there may be some confusion on the dates there. Nelson Avenue right across the street, there's certainly historical relevance to what's going on there. And I'm not speaking as an HPC member tonight, but I voted in favor of the historical preservation, and I didn't sleep well that night. And it really bothered me that I didn't speak my heart and my truth, because I sit on a board with friends, and it was really difficult for me. But I'm telling you, as an individual, I regret that. I wish I had voted not to bring it to you. And the reason is pretty simple. It's based off of economics. When Jane and I purchased Helen's house, it was affordable, and so we did. And we had much lower cost to renovate that home, and so we did. That home functions as my current residence, and I use it as a short-term rental. Because I'm going through a divorce, we had to get it appraised. We had it appraised by Ebert Appraisal Services, who has found it very difficult to give a value, because he said, I have to value this on the idea that you're selling it. When you go to sell it, what's the price going to be? It's a mystery, because it's not considered residential, because the town has mandated that there be commercial on the ground level. Well, he said, it's hard for me to value what that would be. Now, when I think about the historical relevance of the properties, Helen's house and the properties across the street, they were residential. That's what made them historic. But here we are as a council saying, we need commercial activity and we need sales tax. I've been sitting across the street looking at an empty property. And what Spence is saying is something that we really need to consider. Now that Lynn has moved out of the property, Gemini Gardens is no longer there, we have 2 empty spaces. And today I spoke with Marco, who had scratched his head on how the heck am I going to make this thing viable. The rent that he was asking was $5,000 to help cover a mortgage. No one could come up with it. The prior tenants, he approached them and they're like, we were paying $850 a month. How can I afford to pay $5,000? Well, the lowest he could take was $3,500. The highest retail numbers were coming in on the income side of $100,000 for a year. So it does not add up. So Marco today said, my plans fell through. It's going to be sitting empty. He said, hopefully we'll have something that I can do by the fall. So my alarm is twofold. One is, if we make a decision out of our desire for preserving historic, I think it's admirable. But I challenge to look at, why do we want to preserve the historic? Mainly it's because of the charm and aesthetic. Minturn has gone through a lot of changes, and I can look at a lot of historical photos. There's some great buildings that I would like to see rebuilt. So these were 2 little factory houses, 151 and 155. They're cute, they're quaint, but they will not be economically viable for anyone to be able to come in and make something happen. And it really concerns me that, you mentioned, Earl, sales tax were up. Well, the saloon was open. That's a big factor. My business has interpreted the law on delivery in such a way that I'm bringing in a lot of sales tax dollars. There are serious concerns we have with water. We have very low amounts of money in the coffers. We have a staff that's overworked, and we really need to be conscious about economic viability. We had professionals come in and tell us commercial downtown alone doesn't work. You have to have commercial subsidized by residential above it. Well, you're going to be putting a big burden in front of a developer if you say, well, this is historic, but yeah, you can move that house, cha-ching, cha-ching, and you can build something above it, foundations, the costs are going to go through the roof, and it's not going to be viable for a developer. The second thing, that was one thing. The second thing is, we're working so hard towards making a downtown development authority. We're asking stakeholders and members to step in, give your time and energy. Let's do this to help the town. But we're going to put a leash on you and hold you back with some historic preservation. And it's very concerning to me. And I don't see a synchronized effort towards making the economy of this town viable. And I've been here a long time. So I plead with you, before you make a decision tonight, consider the point that I made about the appraiser that I didn't share with you. In other communities who have gone for historic preservation, they have regretted it because of economic viability concerns. So maybe we need to do a little more research before we decide to go ahead and vote these in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else? Lynn?
Lynn Teach, 253 Pine Street. I also was in the building at 155 for 14 years. So I'm going to give you the opposite view. That building is 900 square feet on a 3,700 square foot lot, which also includes 3 parking spots. That limits a little bit of what you can do. It does have a backyard that can be added onto. I was there for at least 7 people who looked at that building. I spoke with those people. They were under 3 of them were under the understanding that that could be turned back into a home because the ad in the paper says it's mixed use, not commercial. So that changed part of that. 2 of them were not even at the time that they came in, and it was not Pete, I want to say that, but when they came in with their realtors, were not even aware of the fact that it could possibly be applied for historical. The realtors had not represented that. And that didn't seem to, at least one of those people were not at all worried about that. One of them was told while I was there talking with them that the back bedroom could probably be shut off, add on to the backyard, and that way they'd have a store up front with a place to live in the back. And the back could go up in stories because that would be new. It may not be a ton of space, but it could. There are ways to make it happen. Yes, that lot property could be moved to the front also. I recently sold a 1897 Victorian home in another jurisdiction in a mixed-use zone to people who were going to put a business in it. And they were going to have an expensive cost to start also. But they chose to do it because that's how they wanted it. Historical properties do sell. Sometimes they take a little longer, but there are people looking for them. The people that came into my store for 14 years, and many of you, maybe not Brian, maybe not Tom, but I think Earl and Gusty and perhaps Eric at the time, I brought in notes that I took that said, tell us what you love about Minturn. And it talked about the historical character of the town. I went to the doctor today and they said, oh, we're so happy you're still fighting to keep the historical character of the town. It's the last one in the county. People make decisions to buy buildings economically too, but sometimes from their heart. Now, these 2 buildings are 2, as Lynn said, iconic. I was there at that meeting. Not only was I there, but I was running it. There were 45 people from this town there that wanted those 2 to be the 2 next buildings to be saved because they have that character. They have that old town character. Other buildings can't be saved. There's been changes made. Minturn Country Club, everybody worries about saving that. That building's been changed. It probably would never pass. Same thing with perhaps Magustos. Now, Magustos might be able to pass, but it would probably never get torn down because of other issues. So there's many, many reasons in this. It's not just that people love it. I just want you to understand that according to this, our new survey, page 22, under historical preservation, 75% of the 188 people who took this survey said that they approve of what the Historical Preservation Committee is doing. 18% said they didn't. So that's 141 for, 34 against, and 13 didn't know. People aren't getting involved in this. They don't know, they don't necessarily know the whole thing except that they want to see these buildings saved, these 2 iconic buildings. I don't think you're going to have a tremendous amount of people trying to save Grammy's Attic or save Minturn Country Club. Those buildings have issues. These 2 do not. I know for a fact the building that I'm in was owned by Smokey Matheson for many years, and he did a lot of work on that building. That building is in good, solid shape. And I know that Marco put some good money into the building next door. Marco chose to buy that building. He knew what he was getting into. He did have an offer for rent, or 2 offers for rent. I know what one of them were. It was a pretty good offer, but it wasn't quite what he wanted. Most of the people that came in my store to look at them were not looking at it to rent it. That's part of the reason why I decided it was time to close. I mean, first of all, it's my age. I can retire. Second of all, they were all looking at it for their own businesses, not as an investment. They were looking at it to rent for their own business. And some of those businesses, which I could name what they wanted, but I don't think it's my place to do it, were in something that would have worked anyhow because of the codes of what would have gone in that building. So, or perhaps because there wasn't enough parking for it. And yet our new community plan is saying there shouldn't be any parking downtown. So there's more things here than just saying, like making it feel like we're going after something to hurt the downtown. There are people there who believe it's going to help the the downtown. There are other communities who have gone historical who are happy they have gone historical. There's always two sides to the story, and I would like you to remember that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Pete?
Hi, I'm Pete Seibert. I live in Westvale, so that gives me a little different standing already. Last night I was up at the council in Vale, and it changes your perspective. It sure changed mine. I'm going to try and stick to stuff that you haven't heard from Spence and from Larry. And I don't disagree with what Lynn's saying either. I think the value in what you have here in Minturn is in the historic nature of it, is in the fact that it's a real town. And it's important to keep that. We've got a dilemma. I've got two different listings. One being Magustos. Lynn mentioned that. Magustos, when I talk to people about it, I say, look, you've got to think of it as buying a box. Go talk to the town, see what they tell you, but it's a box. It's because of other things, encroachments, et cetera. That one, because of that nature, is a very likely candidate for historic designation. Whether it fits the other criteria, I don't want to begin to say. When you get to the other end of the block and you get down to 155 Main, 151 I don't want to speak to, I'm not involved in that, so I really should. 155, the things that I see, if you were to go ahead and make that, give that historic designation now, you would remove one of the barriers that I've had, and that's been the uncertainty. I think you heard that in my letter. And now you know what you're dealing with, so that in a way helps. But at the same time, the size of the building, 900 square feet on a lot that size, without any residential component to it, substantially it reduces your prospects for sales tax revenue and for property tax. So it really, it does come down to trying to balance the quality of what you have and the historic nature and the reality of that the fiscal aspect. What are you going to get for income? I would say that in this case, giving some credence to what was there. I mean, I think the picket fence stays. I think you try to see other things reflected in what would be a newer building meeting the code, commercial space with residential above. To me, that looks like the best outcome. This is speaking from the outside. I'm the first one to recognize that, and I appreciate your time and listening.
Thank you, Pete. So, to go to a higher level, we went ahead and wanted to do some designations because no one was nominating anything. And this is a work in progress as far as we're concerned. We initiated this process just so we could work through these issues and work toward a solution-based resolution to our processes here. And so whether we designate 155, 151 and not 155, I take pause at what you said, Pete, because I think it's important that we are able to somehow find a way to move forward while maintaining character and or if there's things you can do to make it somewhat useful and in its form. That's what we would, I think, hope to get to, at least what I would.
If I could say
Yes,
a few things here. So, I mean, this is so much a case-by-case basis. I mean, merely because a house is 75 years old, even if it's on Main Street, does not mean that it should be designated as historic. And I think there's something very special about the two Nelson houses that other properties that are being discussed tonight don't have, in terms of setting and establishing the character of the town. And there are uses. I want to echo what Lynn is saying. I know, for example, that with respect to 151, there was a full price offer made to purchase that building to use it as a art center, a community art center. And the building was sold for because there was a much more aggressive completely unconditional offer made. And I think that involved a bunch of the parking in the rear. So I don't know that anybody didn't know what they were getting into. But these buildings do have use, special kinds of uses that are really attractive to people. But it just might take a long time, and they're not worth as much as if you were able to raise them and put a big giant commercial building there. It does affect their value, as it should. But that's the kind of town that we want. We don't want a town of just giant buildings.
We're still in open session. Do we have any other people wanting to move forward? Any comments or anything?
Sir, we do have one online with their hand raised.
Okay. Please connect her up. And who is it?
My name is Tom Warren. I am the landlord for 155 Main, and I was previously the landlord for 151 Main before we sold it.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Tom. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for speaking today. Just wanted to talk about a couple brief things here on these two properties, and I appreciate everyone's point of view. It's obviously correct that, you know, all historical designations are in the eye of the beholder. What might be deemed historical by one may not matter to the next. I also appreciate Lynn's testimony. I think she is truly speaking from her heart. But as the landlord of this property, I will just want to reiterate that the property was at 155, which I'll speak to in particular tonight. It is currently not economically viable at what the previous tenant was paying for rent. It will not work. The rent would have to be nearly tripled under current market conditions to make anything work if it was sold. The building at 155 is in a little bit better condition than 151 Main, but neither of them are in excellent condition by any means. I mean, town staff can speak to the absolute nightmare that we went through to correct the water issue at 151 Main, having to do special agreements to operate with temporary washing machine hoses to make the water work to another building. These things were not built well. They were not built to last. They are not brick buildings that were setting in downtown Leadville that were designed to stand a century. They were quickly built housing for a rancher. And yes, there is some historical importance to that, but I think the town at some level has to decide. You know, we started this meeting off with talking about the problem of small developer in getting affordable housing in place. Does the town want to be a museum, or does it want to be a place that has economic viability, is moving forward, and can house citizens? I'm fine either way. We have the building for sale, and I'll end it. You know, if the town truly thinks that this is a gym, the building is for sale. There's nothing precluding anyone from purchasing the building and tomorrow turning it into a historical museum for the town of Minturn. And I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom. Okay. Anyone else out there, Jay?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm gonna close the public hearing. I think we need to do some discussing here. Madison, can you review in a brief manner? I agree kind of that those houses are gonna be hard to be maintained and still be somehow redone in a way that's going to be economically viable, unless there's something in the regs that would make that possible.
So as I stated a little bit earlier, if this is historically designated and someone does want to change it, add on to it, etc., We do have a process for that. That's called the Certificate of Appropriateness process. And if you're just wanting to change the exterior, build an addition, etc., you would follow the design guidelines put out by the Secretary of Interior through the National Park Service.
Is economic viability one of the parameters?
Let me double check that real quick. So, alteration hearing, the review criteria is compliance with the design guidelines. That's the review criteria for alteration. If you wanted to demolish, the review criteria is the applicant demonstrate the proposal mitigate to the greatest extent practical any impact on the historic significance of the buildings, structures, or objects located on the property and adjacent properties, and any impact on the integrity of the building, structures, or objects located on the property or and adjacent properties. The only place that I know of that economic hardship comes in is if your certificate of appropriateness is denied, which is the second process within Historic Preservation Chapter 19, you have the ability to apply for an exemption. Again, that only is able to be applied for if your certificate of appropriateness is denied, and you can apply for an exemption under economic hardship. So that is the only place I know of within Chapter 19 that contemplates money.
Madison, if I can request your guidance through this discussion, I will point out that Madison and I have been looking at ways to simplify the historic preservation process. And we, the other day, took a look at the steps a property owner would have to go through. And I believe there were 8 different independent government processes that it's on our whiteboard upstairs.
I know, I have the memo.
Thank you, it's in the memo, that someone would have to go through. It is arduous, to say the least. So
6, sorry.
6, I digress, 6, not 8. So 6 different independent processes to go through in order to get these approvals. So I want to just acknowledge that Madison is absolutely correct in what she's communicating to the council. There are steps and ways to do it. It's not simple or easy. I just want to make sure we're all, and I apologize for my bluntness. We've got a lot of, I just want to make sure we're clear, and I don't want to candy coat anything.
So with council, I think we need to be thinking about this very seriously. We've had this historic designation process in place for what's been 2 years?
That's correct, 2 years, knowing that it would be fluid and we would need to make adjustments, and it wasn't perfect when we started it, and we were, I believe, crystal clear that adjustments would need to be made. What staff is finding and what I anticipate we will bring to you in the future are ways in which it can be a simplified process. Every single one of those ways involves the public giving up control of what a property owner could do with their historic structure.
So we have to look at our, particularly right now is the 100 block, but this will be a process that will happen, is available throughout town. So we have to decide, the economics, you can't avoid the economics of the situation. Yeah, maybe there'll be a billionaire that really likes that little funky thing and want to put a cute gift shop in there, whatever. But it might be 50 years later and it might still be sitting there. But it is a historical, does have, both of these houses have historical significance. But understanding that if we're designating this historic, and correct me if I'm wrong, unless we're willing to go through certificate of appropriations and that kind of thing, then we need to make a decision on what we're gonna do in the 100 block, which is our commercial core. And quite frankly, to me, as long as we maintain the character of Minturn, if we have some, these houses that are really, you know, they're not a significant architectural design, it's just old. I know that might upset some people, but it's the truth. I mean, those are at best middle-class homes that were constructed from, I don't know whether it was a Sears catalog or whatever, but they were just put together because they were affordable and they were solid houses and people lived there. Versus doing something that would fit Minturn. Our design guidelines of the 100 block are very well done. And let something that would put residential above to activate that neighborhood and a commercial use on the bottom. I was hoping to see there was some kind of way of middle ground on these old houses to where we could make something that would preserve the flavor of that, but still allow, you know, a development that could flourish.
There is.
And to be
but
clear,
you-
yes, pardon me.
You need to throw a rock in the serene pond that is our fixation on the 100 block in the code. Fact of the matter is, Larry brought up some of his things, if we're gonna march down this historic preservation, denoting, those are residential homes, that's what they were. And now we're mandating that they need to form or complete an economic function. It's been stated clearly, they cannot do so in their present form. It could be residential, somebody will, some billionaire, somebody, God knows there's a house right across the street currently on the market for $2.5 million plus or minus. That is a residence. So if we're gonna go down the road of mandating some of these places or designate them as historic, we, in regards to being fluid and flexible, are gonna have to revisit utilization of that property. And if that is residential, because it is a single-story structure and we don't wanna move off of that, then it has to be accepted that residential is an option and it doesn't have to be a business or retail function. Or you go the other road, which admittedly is comical, because at this point, why say residential or historical anymore as opposed to 100 block design guidelines are this. You can demo that house entirely, but it's gotta look like this. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be designated historical. You just have to adhere to our building guidelines in accordance with the 100 block. So thus, you remove these 6 onerous steps of whoever happens to own that. They just know that if we're gonna demo this thing, this is what we're gonna have to build and this is what it's gonna have to look like. So it goes to the point, which is it? Which side of this rail do we wanna be on in regards to historical preservation? If it's A, we want to preserve these historically, then we need to acknowledge use of that property needs to be revisited and not necessarily in accordance with the 100 block code as it's stated right now. Or, it's not historic, adhere to the 100 block building guidelines, moving on. As Lynn clearly pointed out, a large percentage of the community that took the survey has their opinion as well.
You know, we passed the historic preservation guidelines. And if we want to rescind those, that's a big, big issue. And we should do so straightforwardly and involve the community. The community wants historic preservation. The 2 most iconic buildings, from my point of view, in the entire town are those 2 Nelson houses, and they aren't viable as residential. They don't have, they're not, they don't work. If you've been through either one of them, they no longer work as residents, but they do work as commercial spaces, certain types of commercial spaces. And there are no other, of course, they're middle-class houses. Minturn was a middle-class community. People want Minturn to stay Minturn. And there's practically, we have very, very little historical structures that are really have any significance whatsoever. I would say we've got Granny's attic and we've got those two little houses, and that's probably it in terms of 100 Main Street. But if we're going to take those, which are the biggest symbol that we have of Minturn, which is, and they are special, there isn't much middle income Victorian housing left any longer. If we're going to take that away from Minturn, and if we want to change this and eliminate our historic preservation zoning altogether, and we just want a series of big commercial buildings like everybody else has, with maybe some silly Victorian flourishes, a la Georgetown or something in their historic preservation stuff, then we should do so in a straightforward fashion. But of all, if we're not prepared to designate these as historic, we at least owe it to the residents of this town to continue this hearing and give people notice so that they can express their opinions on this issue, because I think it's going to be very, very, very controversial. And it's not just the economic best use of that space that's involved here. It's the very character of the town.
Well, I've been in both structures, and I would disagree that in either case, whether you converted it back to residential or upgraded it accordingly to make it economically viable as a commercial entity, in both cases, it's going to cost money. In their current state, as has been denoted by multiple people, they're not viable unless somebody just has money to burn. So in either case, they're gonna get some renovations or expansion done, whether that's a kitchen and a bathroom or fixing the roof, etc.
I will tell you, the investors that and I participated in this, and we did not have money to burn, but the people who made that full price offer, it worked for 151 approximately 2 years ago. That building worked for that and was economically viable for that particular use.
And I don't disagree, Lynn. The problem is we're very gung-ho on this 100 block, the downtown development. And as soon as NHADA officially closes up shop, and I look at the Denver Mattress building, I'm not real happy with the downtown right now. And it doesn't look like it's going in the right direction. I see empty lots. I see closed businesses. This is not a vibrant fundraising process for this town by any stretch. And I'm not saying I disagree with designating these as historic. I'm just trying to be realistic on, if we do so, you're gonna have to revisit what we would authorize said historic buildings to be used for. That's all.
Tom Warren, Ty, you can say, you came into town and put up a proposal for a good-looking, huge building that would replace the Pope's property and the the mattress building. And there were a hearing, and people stormed in and were very, very, very upset at that building and those buildings being replaced. They didn't want the big commercially successful building there. There was lots and lots and lots of testimony. Now, maybe in 3 years, everything, or 4 years, people have changed their mind. I don't know, but it seems to me that residents should be put on notice if we're thinking of changing our mind on these issues.
Lynn, I would just caution to say it's not black or white. It's not the current building or 5-story monstrosity with a piece of trim that looks Victorian. Like, I think you're being a little too, yeah, like I saw I wasn't here for it, but I saw the initial proposal for the huge building, and I get why people were against it. And I also would have been against it because that's like a whole other thing. That's combining a bunch of lots into one master plan PUD thing, and I'm against those in general. But encouraging individual lots to develop organically and using things like form-based code to encourage people to bring projects that are in line with the current character of the town, I think could result in like some really cool things for the town that would fit within our character and tick all the boxes instead of just like, you know, being a box. So I was just cautioned that it's not black and white like that.
It's a 3,700 square foot lot, which is all that 155 has. There's not much that can be developed. That's a tiny, tiny lot.
Okay, well, let's move the discussion forward rather than trying to design things today. I would like to propose a path here. This is part of our process, and we've gotten some really great input for us to think about. And I think probably I'd like to propose a continuance, and we can have a work session on it, on this project, so we can have Larry and Pete and Lynn, Spencer for sure, Spencer and Stephanie, you know, and any other interests that are involved. Tom, Warren, if you can make it, but let's have a good solid work session to vet what is viable in our historic code and to try to look at how we can shape a code that's going to work. And if it can't, then this council will make the decision on these two lots and move forward. Does that sound appropriate? And that way we can also, work sessions are open to the public. So
I think we should have the people on the Historic Preservation Commission also invited.
Yeah, so anyway, if that sounds like a path forward, we can do it that way, or any other suggestions I'm open to.
I would just add to that you need to acknowledge that our code is also up for debate when we insert historic preservation designations to include in the 100 block.
I agree. Which was also part of the community plan, which the community came up with, so.
Right.
So that's certainly part of the equation as well. And like I say, citizens are welcome to be at the work session. The idea is the participants will want to be in the active discussion at the work session, and then if time allows, we can let them speak their mind, or they can just put down notes and so forth of where their thoughts are, and go from there. Yes, Madison, you're looking at me like you need to say something.
Sorry, no.
Okay. Gussie, you?
I'm in favor of that.
Okay. So do we have a motion?
Can we make a motion for both? Or do we have to address 155 separately?
So let's talk real quick. For an ordinance, you're gonna wanna continue it to a date specific. I think you need to have a discussion with your staff as to what their availability is to coordinate a work session and what timing they need to do that. And then I think from that, you could figure out the date to continue this to.
Can I make a motion on both? Can I make a motion on both though, or individually?
We'll actually open the public hearing on the second item and continue it separately.
2 months, 6 months?
Yeah, I'm just looking for the future agenda items here.
So there would be room.
Speaking historic, yeah.
Definitely historic.
Oh,
Or is that a golf cart?
That's a golf cart.
Yeah.
That's vintage historic for sure.
Permits are actually now available for golf carts. I can just throw that out there. So we would have room. I would need to check with staff on ability to pull it together, but there was going to be discussion tonight on the canceling of the July 3rd council meeting, so there has been nothing scheduled for July 3rd, so there would be room on July 3rd if council would like to keep that meeting open and have a work session and council meeting that night.
I'll be in Africa, so over to you.
Fireworks. Oh, is that Avon's fireworks? Free to go to fireworks.
So other than July,
Other than July 3rd, there is a small amount of room left on the July 17th meeting, or you would be looking out to August 7th, or you can schedule a special meeting.
Well, we could maybe move the 3rd of July to the 2nd of July for a Tuesday. Would that work?
That's at the council's discretion.
This would be the only agenda item on it.
and you're
Work
in the meeting
session
all that
and-
time.
Do we have any meetings that evening?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Except the Towns Independence Day stuff.
That's the town's Independence Day celebration.
The second?
Yes, it's on the 2nd every
Oh,
year.
we have it down there, we really get some Okay,
Let's say the 17th.
let's go with the 17th then.
Okay.
How heavy is that? Because, and,
It's
we'll
the
wanna make
entire
sure.
water discussion, it'll only be a couple minutes.
On the 17th, there are currently 7 items. And I say this with a little hesitance, but which should, in theory, take council less than 2 hours to get through, pending any detours the conversations take.
Okay, I think we should probably start at 4:30. Hopefully, we can have some folks show up.
So 4:30 work session.
Yeah, for the work session, and then we can roll in and get down to an hour of council working way through this issue. Is that what
I'm sorry, so the work session the same day and segue right into the meeting, is that what you're suggesting?
I really think it should be a separate meeting. There'll be a lot of people who will have strong ideas
We'll
about
see how it goes. I mean, you never know in intern, but.
Well, I'm just saying an hour in light of what we're talking about.
We go however long we need to.
So there's an opportunity to have a work session before the meeting. And as council has discussed at other meetings, there has been a hesitance to have a work session on a topic the same evening that a topic is determined. So there may be a value to have the work session on the 17th and the hearings for the historic designation on August 7th, which might provide more public notice and time for
For those that
discussion.
haven't heard that the reason we don't wanna do that is because back when we used to have work sessions all the time on the agenda that was gonna be on the council that day, we'd have all our discussion then, and when it got to council, there was no discussion, we just voted on it and it was there. Unless it was a big issue where people were giving us feedback, so rather than do that, we'd rather have the discussion another time. Alright, so work session the 17th only, except for our regular July 17th meeting. And we can put a blurb out there on our communication to have people that wanna show up at the council meeting on the 7th. But that'll be a major discussion item.
Yes.
So. We don't have to do a motion on the work session, just a motion on the continuance being August 7th.
I make a motion for continuance to August 7th for ordinance number 11. Series 2024 ordinance Town of Minturn, Colorado, amending Town Historic Register, adding 151 Main Street.
August 7th.
The 17th, I mean, the August 7th, right? Okay. Did you say?
I'll say.
Okay. Motion by Eric, second by, motion by Tom, second by Eric. Roll call, please.
Brian, aye.
Tom, I.
Dusty, aye.
Eric, aye.
Earl, aye.
Then nay.
Okay. All right. Motion passes 6-5-1. Next is ordinance number 12, series 2024, first reading. An ordinance amending the town's historic register to add 155 Main Street. I don't know if there's any need to discuss this rather than just moving forward with a public comment and doing a continuance for the same date. Open it up for public comment. Yes, Larry.
Larry Stone, 152 Main Street. I would like to acknowledge both Lynn Feiger and Lynn Teach of what they have said regarding public input. And one point is with the survey results that Lynn Teach brought out, I found it difficult to answer when I looked at the survey because I care about historic preservation. I've preserved an old house. So there's validity to it, and I want to express my opinion, but I also have an opinion about economics and the viability. Therefore, I would consider when doing a public outreach that we give a little bit of the pros and cons of each, that everyone wants a beautiful aesthetic and everyone wants a cute little town. I mean, we love Minturn for that, but it doesn't mean that we want to sacrifice the services. Everyone wants their snow plowed and out of the way, and we have a lot of needs in the town. So I think it's important on a survey to have both items mentioned. The other thing that Lynn Feiger brought up is, and I've heard this before from other council members and prior councils, that the whole community came out. Well, there's 1,000 residents in this town? There's 228 that vote? And so you get 28 people in here, what percentage is that? And so I really feel like it's important to honor what both Lynn's are saying, and let's have an outreach that really helps explain there's economics, there's historic, we want both, and we're looking for ways to mitigate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Pete? You're next, Larry.
Just one point that I heard a few minutes ago, what Tom mentioned, if that were to go back to the historic use and be a single family residence, it would have the historic value and I'd sell it tomorrow.
Sell it tonight.
Yeah.
Yes, Larry.
Lynn Teach, 253 Pine Street. Pete's right, he would sell it tomorrow. Number one, I think expecting a bunch of townspeople who have families and work and jobs showing up at 4:30 for a meeting is early.
And that's for the work session.
For the work session.
Yeah, the meeting will be.
Correct, but you're saying the people could come and speak at the work session. I don't think you're gonna get people here at 4:30. You'll get me here, you'll get Larry here, you'll get Pete here. But I don't think you're gonna get people that live in this town. Yes, there are 1,000 people counted. Does that include the children? Does that include the tenants that come here and stay for 6 months, 8 months and leave? The residents of this town are probably more like about 500, the people who have lived here for years and really care, not just come here to find a place to live for a while. So I think stretching between saying 28 and 1,000 is a bit much. I think there again, it needs to meet in the middle and look at it. I think also that given time, those of us who really believe in it, as obviously it is seen here tonight, have the time to go out and inform people as to what's going on and getting them to come in would be good. So I'm glad you're extending the time for that to happen. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay. So there's no further public discussion. Jay, anybody else?
Yes, sir. Mr. Tom Warren, hold on just a second.
I'll be very quick, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we absolutely would wholeheartedly support that being given a residential use as well, because it would be economically viable again.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, Do we have a motion to continue? No, I'm closing the public hearing. Motion to continue?
Motion to continue to August, I'm sorry, 7th. Ordinance number 12, series 2024, ordinance town of Minturn, Colorado, amending town historic register, adding 155 Main Street.
Okay, motion by Tom, second by Gusty. Roll call, please.
Brian,
Tom, aye.
Gusty, aye.
Eric, aye.
Earl, aye.
Then nay.
Okay, motion passes 6-1. Okay, next item on the agenda, ordinance number 13, series 2024, amending chapter 19 of the Historic Preservation Code to allow the more posting places and to extend the limitations on proposed designations.
That's me. So, based on comments from council as well as examining staff's own process, staff has drafted an ordinance that addresses primarily two items. One, extending the reconsideration of a proposed designation once denied from 1 year to 5 years, and two, adding additional posting places like the website and posting boxes as places to alert people so that the process can be more transparent to the public. And so as part of this ordinance, if you'll notice, an entirely new section has been added. Section 19.415 is proposed, which allows staff to essentially go out to the public and solicit any additional materials for any nomination application that is submitted to the town, and so that we have the fullest picture available to present to the HPC and then obviously subsequently council. And so once that nomination has made its way through the process, and if it is denied, the way the code is currently written, the denial is good for a year, or unless a substantially different nomination application is submitted. Staff has no criteria for how to determine what is a substantially different nomination application. And so it is staff's hope that by soliciting all materials up front, that we can kind of address everything at once. And if a denial is issued, then that kind of allows for a blanket, we will not be accepting any nomination applications on this property for the next, as suggested, 5 years, which is obviously an increase from the 1 year that was originally put into place. So that was the thought process behind the new section. And then if you'll also notice in section 19.910, which I'm sure looks very familiar to you since you reviewed an ordinance on that just a couple of meetings ago, we have also put in place new posting places once we receive the kind of pre-permit application, which is currently only a posting to the site that the pre-permit applies to and is forwarded to the HPC. Now we are memorializing what staff already does, which is put it onto the website as well as send out an e-blast, and then adding to the posting boxes for anybody walking by to review so that it is more transparent. So that is, oh, I apologize, I missed one other thing. Within section 19.910, we've also added that if nobody makes a nomination application within the 2-week period that somebody does goes through due to the pre-permit process, if nobody makes that nomination, then it is understood that nobody would like to nominate it and they do not have to go through this process for the next 5 years.
Okay. Any questions from Madison?
Well done, I have nothing.
Good job. All right. That is an ordinance, right? Or is it a resolution? Yeah. Public hearing. Any comments from the audience? Jay, you have anything?
No, sir.
Close the public hearing. Motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 13, series 2024, an ordinance of the town of Minturn amending chapter 19 of the Minturn Municipal Code.
Second.
Motion by Gusty, second by Tom. Roll call, please.
Brian, I.
Tom, aye.
Gusty, aye.
Eric, aye.
Earl, aye.
Lynn, I.
Okay, that's ordinance number 13, first reading. Ordinance number 20, resolution 25, series 2024, resolution setting the water rates for residential units on individual meters, multiple units on single meter, and irrigation accounts. And Jim, you can finally do something.
Do
I have
to? Any chance we could take a 5-minute recess for those?
We'll take a recess. We're back. We're back. Okay, so the next item on the agenda, I'll repeat myself, resolution 25, series 2024, a resolution setting the water rates for residential units on individual meters, multiple units on a single meter, and irrigation accounts.
Thank you. So I will just very briefly say before Jim Mann gets started that staff took council's feedback from the discussion that was had at a prior council meeting. We have incorporated or attempted to incorporate that feedback into the resolution that you're seeing before you this evening, whereby Jim found a significant number of folks have the ability to save on volumetric water with this new approach. So Jim, I'll let you take it from there.
Oh, I thought you were gonna finish the whole thing for me.
Oh. They hear me talk a lot.
Well, okay. Thanks for having me this evening. And again, to reiterate what Michelle said, thank you for the input at the last meeting. We took that input back and went back and crafted a rate structure that I think meets what you folks were looking for. And as Michelle said, we've got several different classes that we looked at, but on the residential side, we looked at single family homes that are single metered, that, there's the class that has just one SFE, and then there are those larger structures that then go beyond that and have a greater number of SFEs. Then there's structures that have residential in them that are single metered, and there are a number of units that are on that same single meter. And so one of the points that was made, or that we're looking at, is that the single family that is a 1 SFE is going to be charged 1 SFE, and then they'll be charged the volumetric rates based on their usage. The single family that is plus a 1 SFE or more is going to be charged that base rate with a multiplier. So if they're 1.4, they're going to pay 1.4 times whatever the base rate is, whatever the debt rate is. But in terms of water use, they're still going to be at the same tier structure as everyone else as a single family. We will continue to apply the multiplier for a structure that has a number of residential units in it. So if it was a structure that had 4 units in it and was being charged 4 SFEs, they would pay the multiplier on the base and the debt rates. They would also have the tier structure multiplied by 4 as well, because there's basically 4 units on 1 meter. So that's kind of the base on the residential side. We did adjust the tiers to better reflect where I think the council felt that the average user was falling. And so the tiers now would range from 0 to 4,000 gallons, 4,001 gallons to 6,000 gallons, and then 6,001 or more. Those rates would be set at, the initial rate would be $4.25 a thousand gallons. The second tier would be $9.75, and then the third tier would be $15. So the net effect of that is that you're really capturing those heavy users in the summertime that are watering or doing a lot of outside watering. They're going to pay more than they have in the past because they're going to be paying a much higher rate on the volumetric side than previously. Beyond that, the majority of residential customers in that single tier or that single SFE are going to see a reduction in their overall water bill. And that reduction, I don't want to say an average because there's such a variation in terms of where you fell, but if you are just an average user, you're going to see a reduction in your annual water bill. I did include, as you requested, some additional account information in terms of showing what that change would be for 15 randomly selected accounts. I just randomly picked them. I made sure to include a couple that were higher users in the summer months for irrigation wise to show what the increases would look like there. I think when we started this, and we talked about this before on the residential side, we tried to craft the rate structure to make sure that there wasn't a real increase in terms of what the impact was going to be on changing the tier structure. And so what we came up with, or this structure came up with, about a $16,000 drop in terms of what the volumetric revenue would be on the residential side. So it's actually a reduction in terms of what you're going to get on the residential side. So then we moved into the irrigation sprinkler side of things, and the big issue here was that none of the irrigation sprinkler accounts were being charged any of the base or debt fees. So they were basically getting a meter and they weren't paying for that historic cost of the system. They were just paying a volumetric rate, albeit that volumetric rate was higher. Most of the irrigation sprinkler accounts, if they were more than one SFE, they were getting that multiplier applied to their volumetric usage, and very few of them ever got out of the first tier. So there was really no penalization for using a lot of water. So for the irrigation and sprinkler, we're basically combining those into one single rate structure with tiers that range from 0 to 8,000 gallons, 8,001 to 16,000, 16,001 to 24, 24 to 32, and then 32 or more. Those rates in that first tier dropped to $6.38 a thousand. Second tier was $14.63 a thousand. Third tier was $22.50. Fourth tier was $27.50, and the fifth tier was $32.50. The higher tiers are significantly less than where you were. Because the irrigation is not returned to the system, there's a greater cost of that to the calculation that the water lawyers look at in terms of your usage. Basically what we did was that was a 1.5x multiplier on the first three tiers off the residential rate. That's how we came up with that rate. And then the fourth and fifth tiers were just added on to the back end of those. Basically what that amounted to on, well, let me go back and on the, you have one account that's not on a non-potable system. So they're pulling water directly out of, is that Cross Creek? Eagle River. They're pulling one account that's pulling directly out of the Eagle River. It's not a potable water system. It's not treated. So from that perspective, we set it up where the tiered rate structure is basically half of what the first three tiers are for the potable water system, and then increase $5 increments for the fourth and fifth tiers. We also applied, basically, because we don't have any real good data in terms of what the base and the debt fee should look like for the non-potable system, because we don't have a really solid infrastructure, initial cost, replacement cost, operation, et cetera. We applied a 25% multiplier to the base and the debt fee. So it's only 25% of what the rest of the system is paying, because a lot of that has to do with the water treatment plant, the operation of the treatment plant, the storage, et cetera. none of which the non-potable system deals with. So when we put this all together, the residential changes results in about a $16,000 drop in revenue. The irrigation and sprinkling system represents about a $47,000 increase. When those two net out, it's about a $31,000 off the 2023 test year data that we're using. It's about a $31,000 increase in terms of the revenues that the system is going to see. That's, I emphasize that that's our first blush based upon the 2023 data. I think there are going to be changes in terms of what's going to happen with people watering outside. So you're going to see a lot of wholesale changes. So I'm not convinced that you're going to see a $31,000 increase in revenues. I think it's probably going to be closer to a net wash.
So on the non-potable account, how are we measuring how much water they're pulling out of the river?
It's metered.
It is metered.
It is metered, yeah.
And is that also does Little Beach, are both metered?
Separately.
Okay. So, sounds like we're gonna lose money on this deal.
No.
On paper,
Yeah.
based on the 2023 year test data, which is last year's usage, you would actually see about a $31,000 increase in revenues. I caution you to not go out and spend $31,000 because I think people are going to change how much water they're putting outside. Those that are going to be in the heavy sprinklered outdoor, they're going to probably make modifications. And I even think on the irrigation sprinkler side, you may see a reduction in terms of the volumetric usages there as well. And also on the one potable water user, which is a very heavy user, I think you'll see a reduction there because they're using a significant amount of water. There are a couple of accounts that I think there's still needs to be some auditing in terms of, you know, how many SFEs they are, in terms of how much water they're using. And I think, again, as they look at increases in what they'd be paying, they're probably going to make modifications to what they're putting out on the ground.
I think the bigger point is, one, a reduction in the bill for single-family residential. Two, driving in the direction of changing habits of our largest consumer of water, which is sprinkler and irrigation, which we want to reduce.
I had a question on your on the tier rates. So last time I think when we had it at 3,000, the break-even point for like a residential single one SFE was around 6,000. So like that's where you're under the current rates versus the proposed rates. That's where it kind of like crossed over to becoming more expensive. What's with the new one? What's that number?
It's going to be similar.
So
where
around 6,000 to 7,000
Yeah.
gallons is where it actually becomes more
Your average residential user that actually lives in their house, occupies full time, is in that 4,000 to 5,000 gallon range. So most of your customers probably will have a small amount that they're going to get into that second tier, but many are not.
So what I'm seeing, I'm all for tier pricing. I think we need to do it. And I think the whole point of it is to encourage people to conserve. But we're, at least with respect to the residential rates, we're being so aggressive. I don't think you're giving people space to conserve. What we're doing is we're discriminating in favor of second homeowners, people who can afford to be gone to the shoulder seasons, people who aren't actually in their houses. The average 4-person household in the United States uses 12,000 gallons of water a month. For a single person living alone, the average is 3,000 gallons. So a single person does fine with this. But you have a family of 4, which is what we want families in our town. We want people who actually live in their houses. We don't want to discourage them. How much can they really cut back on their water? They cannot water their lawn. They cannot flush the toilet quite so often, but they're not going to get down to 4,000 gallons. They don't have that option. Even Eagle Water and Sand District doesn't start their tier structure to 6,000 gallons a month. And by 4,000 gallons a month, we are just giving the shaft to the very people we want to protect in town. The wrong people are going to be penalized by this.
But then our previous structure was at 3,000 gallons. We've increased the amount of water that you can use and lowered the price from what it was before.
Yes, but if you have to use more, if you're that family of 4 and you actually live in your house, so you're seniors and you're in there all day and you're using the toilet all day, you're not going to be able to get by on 4,000 gallons no matter what you do. And sure, you'll get a cheaper 4,000 gallons, but then you're paying 50% more for that. And let's say you have to use 8,000 gallons, you're paying 100% more. And it's just, the numbers are wrong. No other community that wants families in its midst, including Eagle Water Sand District, starts the tier structure at 4,000 gallons.
Is that based on like house size too? Aren't we a lot smaller average house size than Eagle County in
You're
general?
talking average for the whole United States. It's 12,000 for a family of 4. We don't have that many families in town. We have a lot of single people. So, they don't use that much water. But we want families. We don't want to penalize them.
Like, was there any way to vet your example accounts for second homeowner versus families? Because I know I'd raise my hand as there's like 6 people in my house at some points, and we use way less than 12,000 gallons a month.
I mean, I can look at some of the data and tell you which ones are the houses that are obviously second homes, because sometimes there's 0 usage. But when I average out all of the residential customers, the average monthly usage is 3,290 gallons.
And that includes a lot.
That's including some of those that are going to be second homes. Unless I'm given a list of who's second home and who's not.
That's just for like winter months, so isn't it? Jim, it's not like averaging for irrigation season?
Well, it average, I mean,
Or did you take 1 month?
that's, so in January, it's 3,080 gallons. In February, it's 2,430. In March, it's 2,666. In April, 2,050.
What's July?
July is going to be 4,800.
There's your irrigation.
There's your irrigation pushing it up.
But it's also less because in the spring, because people are gone. And people who can afford to are often gone. People who can't afford, who have real jobs here, who are working all the time, they're going to be paying the big bills for this.
But I would disagree, because if we say July and we say December, I would put to you, those homes are occupied. So Jim's numbers are correct. On average, the majority of the homes in our town are occupied at that time, and the average utilization rate were those 2 sets of numbers. Because they are not unoccupied in the peak seasons. I would agree, in the shoulder season, I would throw those out. But for July and December, January, I think those are pretty valid numbers.
The entire United States, the average water use and people on average don't have big homes, but they do have families. For 4 people, the average nationwide is 12, and the other communities don't have so many second homes, is 12,000 gallons
Because
a
they
month.
have abundant
And
water.
3,000 gallons per person.
I understand that nationwide that the average is 12,000. But that does not take into consideration that, 5 months out of the year, you're not irrigating anything in Minturn compared to if you're living in Georgia or Florida. I mean, so when you look at a nationwide average for water use, it's going to be skewed by arid areas that are watering on a daily basis, every month of the year. It's going to be skewed by Arizona. It's going to be skewed by Texas. It's going to be, there's going to be skewing of those numbers that's going to push that average up.
But there's also skewing for areas that get rain all year round. And where irrigation isn't required, period.
We can't base what we do on the entire country. We need to base what we do on what we can afford to do and how that we can make it more possible through conservation to meet our goals. And right now, this is encouraging conservation. Now, I can't address what a family of four does as far as maybe Brian could. As far as
I can.
Check your water usage.
Exclude my daughter who tries to drain the entire Eagle River on the shower. Excluding that, yeah, we're nowhere near that. I'd say we're in the 4,000 to 6,000 tier.
Yeah, they got lined up there too. Yeah.
But to circle back, the entire nation aside, those are the numbers for the town of Minturn. And one of the key issues most residents have right now is their water bill. This reduces the water bill, at the same time encourages conservation, and at the same time addresses the largest category of consumption of water in our town.
To a point, it reduces the water bill to some, it doesn't for all. The high users are gonna feel it the worst. I mean, the ones that, I seen some of them that was on your shade, 27,000 gallons in a month, or 21,000. They're gonna feel it at $15 per thousand. I know we're trying to encourage water conservation, but if they're struggling and having a hard time making ends meet, we're not gonna see any lawns in this town. People just aren't gonna water, they're gonna die. And then, I hate to say it, I've said it before, and everybody looked at me like I had three heads. We worry about fire danger. I mean, we're just creating it ourselves if we're putting the rates so high that somebody isn't gonna water their yard. I feel for them people, I really do. I mean, it's a big blow.
Well, if you look at the table on page 368, we're saving the majority of people in this sample 15 unit sample that we have here. We're saving more money than we're
Out of most of them, but look at the two that's in the black. Those people aren't saving anymore. Over to the right, or to scroll back.
Yeah, I know that.
Those two in the black are the ones that I'm referring to.
That's why, they'll just have to cut back on the water.
That's what I'm afraid of, though. If they can't afford to even not water, what is it gonna do to their yards? I know we're trying to conserve or promote conserving water, but to what point is somebody gonna quit conserving water and go to not even using it? And not even, do we price them out of that?
There's alternatives, you don't have to have, water hungry turf, you can xeriscape.
But it costs money for them to do that. Yeah, I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that, because I tried to do that when we built our house. I was told, nope, you gotta have a lawn, so here I am, 35 years later with a lawn.
We didn't have climate change, we weren't aware of climate change 35 years ago.
But you have a lot of people that has big yards. Go down and look at Isabel Trujillo's on the end of Pine Street. How would you like to water that?
We have covered though that there's a lot of resources available and grants and programs to come out and do like an audit on your irrigation system, like maybe 21,000 gallons. That sounds like there's like a leak in that irrigation system. That's a lot of water. That's like, so like I think the idea is that if you want to drive a BMW and have a acre lawn, like that's your choice, you're going to pay for it. But, in the reality of the Mountain West in 2024, 2025, like we need to start encouraging different land use, and due to our water supply, due to a lot of other things, and we are out of step.
I'm trying to think of the older people who've lived here their whole lives, can they afford to do that? You know, they're living on, $2,000 maybe a month. How can you tell them, oh, you can't water your yard anymore, you gotta go zero-scape, oh, go do it, and they don't have the money to do it? It's tough.
I don't think
One of these days, you're gonna end up in that position, and you'll see too. I mean, it's not an easy position to be in for some people.
I mean, this is gonna double my water rates, like the fact that the base rates and everything are going up with the multiplier. Like I have 2 SFEs from when this house was built. I get it, but I also think that this provides a lot of people in this town, given the fact that we're going to be increasing our debt load and increasing our base rates to pay for some new stuff. This gives them an opportunity to make some cutbacks and save money on water.
I think we'll see more real estate signs myself, but yeah, they'll see the $2.6 million houses and say, you know what, we'll go someplace else, and
probably happen no matter what.
Yep.
Well, when it comes to the yards, there's no question you guys got screwed. Avon's in the same boat. The problem is, do you continue a bad policy? And it was a bad policy long ago to mandate that people have a half-acre yard of grass, which looks great, but is high maintenance and requires a lot of water.
And trees, they were big into trees.
And so I'm just driving to the fact that unfortunately, it's a bad policy. We can't keep throwing good money after bad policy. And there are ways, as Brian alluded to, just as that presentation, the other meeting, for those folks that have that issue to figure out ways to solve it. It sucks. I'm not arguing that for a second. But on the flip side is we can't perpetuate a bad policy.
I know Walking Science Center has programs that if you're at a low AMI level, there's a lot of services that are free. And I believe that turf replacement might be part of that too.
It just seems like it should start at 6,000, not 4,000. Because and that will do, because most of the people between the 4,000 and 6,000, except for single people, really don't have the option. That's not outdoor use at all. For a
It's
lot
cheaper up to 7,000.
Again, this is more water per tier than there was previously.
Yeah, we get 1 more thousand than we did last time. We went from 3 to 4. I mean,
we could be more conservative about this, try it out for a year, see what it actually does for people. And if it's not doing enough conservation, then we can make it more radical. But we're starting off with the most radical tier system in the state.
Well, I don't see it that way, Len. This is this will save people money. A majority of people will probably save. You can take a few extreme cases that have nice landscaping or large yards that do that, but most people have smaller lots, less irrigation needs, and the majority of people will be paying less money now than they were.
Personally, I'm all for it. I'm into xeriscaping. I'm changing my entire yard. Okay, I'm taking out my grass. Okay, I'm for this. I'm just thinking that that we should start at 6,000, not 4,000. That if we're wanting to make a community and attract the kinds of families that we say we do to live here and retain them, that's what we should do. Because I don't think we're talking about outdoor landscaping for families at that level.
We're having the same discussion over and over, so I want to cut that short if we can.
I'd like to call the question, actually.
Yeah, well, that's exactly where I was heading. So I think we've discussed it. I mean, when we start repeating ourselves, we're done. So with that, we have resolution number 25. on the tiered structure as that's in front of us. So I'll take a motion to approve or disapprove, and we'll go forward.
I make a motion to approve resolution number 25, series 2024. Resolution setting and approving residential water irrigation rate fees for the town of Minturn, Colorado.
I'll second.
Motion by Tom and a second by Eric. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Let's do a roll call just to make sure. Go ahead and roll call it.
Brian, aye.
Tom, aye.
I'll abstain.
Eric, aye.
Earl, aye.
Lynn, nay.
So 4 in favor, 1 abstention, and 1 nay. Resolution 25, series 2024 passes. Okay, we're on to ordinance number 14, series 2024, first reading. An ordinance amending the Belden Place PUD final plan.
I'll talk to you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the council will recall, we entered into a settlement agreement with the developer of the Belden Place PUD a while back. That settlement was to no small degree possible because the developer of Minturn North identified that they did not need a certain number of SFEs of water service that had been reserved for them, and had agreed to make that water service available to the Belden Place development, which had come in shortly after Minturn North. The settlement agreement contemplated that we would review a few land use applications in order to modify the approvals that had been heard by this council back in 2022. So you may recall that in March of 2022, we heard 4 applications from Belden Place, a zoning application for a PUD final plan, a plat application for a final plat, a subdivision improvements agreement application, and an application for a cost sharing agreement related to certain drainage improvements. You are going to hear, all 4 of these are going to come back in front of you between this meeting and the next meeting. Specifically to approve a minor change to the PUD zoning. Essentially what the developer is proposing to do in order to reduce the amount of water service needed to build out this property. They're going to combine a triplex lot into one lot that would allow for a single family residence and an ADU. And so the amendment to the zoning, it's a PUD zoning, specifically calls out for this lot that it would be a single family residence with an ADU. That takes the water usage from that space from 3 SFEs down to 1.5 SFE. The amendment to the plat, again, simply removes those lot lines from the triplex lot and makes it one unified single family lot. Both of those applications are in front of you tonight because they are approved by ordinance. We're amending things that the code requires an ordinance to accomplish. At the next meeting, you will also see a resolution to approve an amended subdivision improvement agreement. We'll go through that in actually quite a bit of detail at the next meeting. As well as a resolution canceling the cost sharing agreement for the drainage improvements, as that was one of the stipulations in the settlement agreement, was that the town was not going to cost share in those drainage improvements. So in front of you today for ordinance number, thank you, 14. is the ordinance to amend the PUD zoning final plan. Again, the changes are pretty minimal. They really do relate to just the zoning applicability to this one lot that's being consolidated. I did have a discussion with the applicant's attorney, Brian Bevan, who is with us today and can answer any questions you may have from the applicant's standpoint. It may make his own comments if he wants to. That this PUD document includes language about affordable housing. And the reason is that this development came before the council before we approved the affordable housing code. And the developer had voluntarily agreed to essentially incorporate the affordable housing provisions we were working on into the PUD guide. We just amended the affordable housing code as it relates to the AMI provisions. I have asked Brian to go back and consult with his client if they're willing to change the AMI provision in the zoning guide to match what the code has been updated to, and we will discuss that between first and second reading. So the changes that are proposed are very minimal. They are in conformance with what was anticipated as part of the settlement that was negotiated and approved by this council. I am happy to answer any questions, again, related right now to the PUD guide. I would invite Brian if he has any comments he would like to make. And council, of course, is free to ask staff and the applicant any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions? Go ahead, Tom.
2 items. The 3 down to 1. Is that directly due to SFE math or lack of them?
It is, although even with that change, it does not get this development to having the full amount of SFEs needed for full build out. There are 3 lots along the highway that will have a covenant recorded against them while certain drainage improvements are constructed, prohibiting development of those lots. The reality is that I think the development remains 3 SFE shy of being able to fully build out the development.
And then on the AMI piece, if I remember correctly, this is the development that triggered the whole discussion and revision of the our AMI calculation in the first place. And at that time, the developer stated, rightfully so, I planned my development based on that number. That number's changed dramatically, and I understand he's going back to have that discussion, but that number even changed from original submission to the secondary AMI, and now we're obviously at another number. So I guess it goes back to the question is, I guess we'll wait, but I would imagine there's a pretty significant change to the build or this entire PUD guide based on that, because it was 200% at time of the original submission.
That is correct. I'm not personally familiar with whether it was this development that triggered the reevaluation.
Yeah.
But again, we have requested that question be asked of the developer.
Okay, any more questions for Mike before we?
I would just note this is also the discussion that made us rethink, and I won't bring up water too much on it, but current zoning and water nexus is encouraging 3 to 1 with our current situation, so it's something we gotta solve. Like that, a triplex to a single family home is not gonna make a more affordable.
Or arguably 3 to 2.
Yeah,
Well,
You
the
know,
reason that happened is because they didn't have enough water available.
Exactly, and I know we're not gonna open that can of worms again, but specifically, but we should be front of mind thinking about it, because every development that's gonna come in while we have these water shortages out there, they're gonna be encouraged to make the most money possible on that instead of building, triplexes and that, so it's a tough place. We lost some stuff that's gonna be more affordable for a single family.
Okay, so if there's no more questions for Mike. Brian would like to come up and have anything to say about this discussion?
Yeah, no, Brian Bevan on behalf of Belden Place. Mike summarized it perfectly. I'll go back to my client about the drop from 200 to 140. I'll talk to him tomorrow about it.
120.
120. 120.
120.
My apologies. And talk to Mike about it.
It's gonna be a very pointed discussion.
Okay, any further discussion from the board? We'll open this up, or do we? Is this a resolution?
Public hearing.
We're up for the public. Any questions, any comments? Lynn?
Lynn Teach, 2000 Pine Street. I just have one small one. When Brian says this is going to make it more expensive, we're talking 2 years later than that project originally came in. No matter what, that project's going to be more expensive. The house next door to me just went on the market for $2,650,000. The change in trying to keep some deed restriction in there may increase the prices of what's there, but it's already probably 30, 40, 50% higher than it would have been 2 years ago. So just as a reality check. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Elmer, anything you wanted to say? Or you just
No, I just like to get it going.
I bet you do. Okay. Jay, you got anybody out there?
No, sir. Nobody with their hand up.
And Mr. Mayor, I have a public comment that was emailed in for the record that I will read at this time. This is from resident Tracy Anderson at 1016 Mountain Drive, Minturn. She says, I am writing this in regard to the Belden development. I cannot attend the town council meeting in person this evening. I know that the litigation has ended and the town is obligated to accept their settlement terms. However, I want to state that I watched this process play out over the last few years, and I continue to be dismayed by the reprehensible actions of this company. They strong-armed our community, our small town, to get water that they were never entitled to have. They lied about their water needs during the entire approval process and brought a frivolous legal case against the town they purported to love, which has been costly in terms of time and financial resources. They knew the town was maxed out with litigation at that time and used this vantage point to get the water that they failed to obtain through legal means. It was truly deplorable. I hope that as a new council, you will proceed with caution in the future when unscrupulous developers come before you, pretending to have the best interests of the town as their compass, but really only care about profit. Please be judicious and balance your future decisions in such a way as to maintain the character of the town as well as the safety of the residents. By safety, I am referring to the fact that there is only one road that everyone will need to use to exit the town in the event of a wildfire, so less traffic is better. I don't think that all developers are amoral, but this one certainly has shown to be just that. On another note, when they started in with the bulldozers a few years ago, I had to call the sheriff on them 3 times in just a few weeks because they refused to abide by the noise ordinance. I can only hope that they will have the decency to respect it this time and build only within the time that is allotted. Thank you for your attention to this letter.
Okay. Do we have any further? Oh, I'm closing the public hearing. Any further discussion from the board? Do we have a motion on ordinance 14, series 2024, first reading?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 14, an ordinance of the town of Minturn approving the amended final development plan for the planned unit development for Belden Place PUD and amending ordinance number 4, series 2022.
Second.
Motion by Gusty, second by Tom. Roll call, please.
Brian, I.
Tom, aye.
Dusty, aye.
Eric, I.
Earl, aye.
Lynn, I.
Okay, we have an ordinance approved on first reading. Moving on to ordinance 15, series 2024. First reading, an ordinance amending the Belden Place PUD final plat.
So, Mr. Mayor, as previously covered, the settlement agreement contemplated the amendment of the plat to implement the zoning change that was just approved on first reading, specifically to combine a triplex lot into a single family lot. Ordinance number 15 and the attached plat does just that. I would note that the town engineer has made a comment about on the plat, there are these little areas on certain lots shown as easement encroachments. We may be bringing back for second reading version of the plat that eliminates those because we think they're handled already under the PUD zoning. But that's something that we still need to work out, and the town engineer had some personal matters that prevented him from working on that this week. So we'll get to that next week and let you know if that requires another minor change to the plat.
Okay, so we have hopefully you have the plat in front of you. Is there any questions on the plat from council?
3 to 1 or 3 to 1.5.
I had one. If no one else has any. I was just interested in the pond.
Back in the northwest corner?
Yes, correct. Northeast corner, I think.
North.
Get to that part. We got about 25 shots of this thing. Let's see, sheet 5. Where is it? Anyway, it looked like they had a storm drain running from the pond into the intake of the storm drain that goes underneath the road. And I was just curious whether that was what I was seeing is what they're trying to do. In other words, would that pond go away and thus not have a residual drainage area out there?
Are you referring to a pond that's in front of the Christensen house?
Correct.
Okay, so I talked to Jeff Spinell about this last week, about that drawing, and I know the one you're talking about, although I can't remember which page it is. There's kind of a dark shaded area that goes on, looks like it goes under the road, and that would be a culvert.
Right. Mm-hmm.
According to Jeff, that is not a culvert.
It was not.
That's what he told me,
Okay.
that the pond on the Christensen property is intended to catch stormwater drainage from the Christensen property and a few lots that are behind the Christensen property and to detain it. And that essentially everything else drains to the, I guess that would be the northwestern, there's a open space parcel where there's a pond. And that one of two things is going to happen, and we'll talk about this in more detail at the next meeting when we discuss the subdivision improvement agreement. The developer would like to extend a stormwater drain pipe underneath Highway 24 to the Eagle River. There are some permitting hurdles, in particular the requirement to get a Forest Service permit because that ends up on Forest Service property, that they still have to work out. And so we have this alternative drainage provision in the subdivision improvement agreement, and this is no different than it was 2 years ago, where they have a defined period of time in which to permit and construct the pipe under the highway out to the river, or in the alternative, they have to develop detention on lots. Oh, my bad eyes. 18, 19, and 20, 17. The 3 lots that front the highway.
Yes, on page 440. Has that drawing? That's the drawing with it.
Yeah. So the answer is, again, according to Jeff, there is not a culvert underneath the road that goes in and out of this development.
Okay.
The drainage is separate from one side to the other side of that driveway.
Okay. That's the only thing I had.
And we'll talk more about drainage at the next meeting.
Any more questions? Okay. We'll take a motion.
Public hearing.
Any comments on the PUD final plat from the public? Jay, you got anybody out there?
No, sir.
Okay. Close public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Your turn.
I'll make a motion to approve Town of Minster Ordinance 15. Am I doing this one right? I was just scrolling, looking for, let's see. Got it. Yep. 15 Series 2024, an ordinance of the Town of Minturn, Colorado, approving the amended final subdivision plat for Belden Place PUD and amending ordinance number 5 Series 2022.
I'll second that.
Motion by Brian, a second by Gusty. Roll call, please.
Brian.
Gusty, aye.
Eric, aye.
Earl, aye.
Lynn, I.
Okay. First reading is approved on ordinance 15. Moving on, resolution 28, series 2024, a resolution approving Belden Place SIA. And appear as a request for continuance.
This was noticed for today. Again, we as a matter of course don't approve subdivision improvements agreements until the second reading of the ordinances approving the subdivision, so we're requesting that get continued to the next meeting.
Okay. That's resolution, okay. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion for a continuance of resolution 26 series 2024, resolution approving Belden Place SIA. Request for continuance to what date? June 19th.
All second.
Motion by Tom, second by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That passes. Next, we have ordinance number 16, series 2024, first reading. 478 River Street nomination application, request for continuance there as well.
Yes, so we received, it was actually our first pre-permit application to demolish 478 Eagle River Street. So the 2-week notice was put up and we received a nomination application before that 2-week period had ended in efforts to move the process along quickly. This application was noticed for the HPC meeting that happened 2 weeks ago and this town council meeting. However, the property owner let us know that he was actually getting married on June 1st and going on his honeymoon, and requested that we move the HPC meeting to June 18th and the council meeting to June 19th. So I am here today to present that request.
So continuance to the 19th.
Yes.
Is the property owner the person that made the? Noted.
Okay, there's no further discussion. I'll open it up to, oh wait, do we have to open it up to public hearing on a continuance?
No, although there is somebody on the TV who may have an interest in this discussion.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see you there.
Oh, that's okay. I'm the property owner. My name's David Ford, and yes, Lily and I got married on Saturday, and that's why we wanted to push everything back 30 days, just so we could enjoy our wedding. And the hearing is on the 18th with HPC, so I talked to Madison and was hoping that we could get the town council meeting, the first reading on the 19th. So that is our hope.
I think we were heading that way. Thank you, David. I appreciate
Yes,
it.
sir.
Congratulations on getting married.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
All right. Anything else you need to say?
No, sir. I think that's it.
Okay, David, thank you. Okay, that will, anybody else out there? Jay?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, with that, we'll entertain the motion for continuance to June 19th.
I'll make a motion to continue ordinance number 16, series 2024, 478 Eagle River Street nomination application until June 19th.
I'll second.
Motion by Gusty, second by Eric. Roll call, please.
Brian.
Gusty, aye.
Eric, aye.
Earl, aye.
Lynn, I.
Okay. That is continued to June 19th.
Okay.
And there are no discussion direction items. So cool.
Thank you all. May I exit now, guys?
Yes. Yes, we're all done with you, Dave. Thanks.
Thank you all. You all have a good night. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we have future agenda items. Anyone have anything they want to get on the agenda sometime in the next few months?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, my apologies that I forgot at the manager's report tonight to bring up council representation on committees and boards.
Oh, yes.
So we could address a request. So if we might add a discussion direction item for the June 19th meeting, I will not be here. I don't feel like I am necessary for this conversation to address council representation on boards and committees. That would be appreciated.
So well, we can go ahead and move forward with this if it's really quick.
Okay.
So let's see what we can do. Okay, so Eric had 3 assignments and he doesn't have the time to do the High Five Media position, which is once a quarter.
Yeah. Yes. Courtney. There's a meeting next week, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to see if anybody else had, how long are your meetings, Austin?
Not very long.
So it's been an hour once every 3 months.
What time or
What
day
day
of
of
the
the
week or anything, any other? One second.
Sorry, it's Monday the 17th at 12:30 to 1:50 p.m.
Yeah,
roughly around there.
otherwise I do it.
I have work meetings every Monday from 9 to about 1. So if it's on Mondays, then that's not gonna work for me.
Sunday and Mondays.
Mondays
At
is
3:30, so I couldn't do it. Kate Shafani's not here.
Or if there's like some shuffling we can do.
Yeah, I think
When is the next meeting?
the 17th. I think she's gonna be
This month?
So this thing.
Was there one that I could talk to her and we could just see if we could shuffle one that would have a better schedule? I don't know what else she is doing.
Well, this discussion, is it just about this particular one, or?
Yeah, just this one, that's it.
So nothing on the next meeting, we're just trying to hash out high five media representation.
Okay, well, I guess we'll, since we can't have any nominees here, I guess we'll just delay to June 19th. As you were thinking.
So my request.
Yes. like
Okay.
you were.
Thank you.
Okay, never mind. Okay, so we're back to future agenda items. There are none, I'm assuming.
Have enough.
Do we have someone that wants to adjourn this meeting?
There's a lot of people that want to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion by Eric. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, and a second by Gusty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
But is that a splitter?
Linen pants.
I was about to say, those look like the